Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lodge, where today on this fine afternoon, we're discussing Final Fantasy XVI. We're going to keep it spoiler-free. We'll talk about some of the things that happened in the tutorial in very beginning, but if you haven't played the game yet or you're not all the way through it, don't you worry. We're not going to spoil anything for you. We're really just here to give our first thoughts, first impressions, reactions to everything that's going on in Square's latest title. But anyway, we couldn't do it if not for the sages of the Lodge, the beautiful names you see right up here on your screen. Couldn't do it without them. Wouldn't be here without them. And that's why we love them. So again, today's episode is going to be a good one. We've got both Will's Word and Jashish in the Lodge today. So going to be a lot of fun. Let me just give them a little notice. Let them know we're coming. Here we go. And again, going to be a good one. Also want to give a shout out to Ill-Fitting Trousers, who's leading us off by subscribing on Twitch for his 16th month. What an absolute psycho. You all should check out Trousers. He's a great streamer. He's also got a good YouTube channel. But anyway, without further ado, it is time for us to hop on in. Fellas, it's time for us to get rolling. How are we doing? Time to talk some FF16. And before we do so, maybe both of you guys just introduce yourselves, let people know a little bit about what you're about. Let's do this in alphabetical order to keep it simple. Josh, why don't you go first, and then Will, you take the baton, and we'll get right into the Final Fantasy XVI discussion.
Sounds good. How's it going, everyone? I'm Jashish. I'm a JRPG and horror streamer. You can find me on Twitch, YouTube, anywhere, same name. I'm very, very excited to be in the Landy Lodge once again to talk some Final Fantasy 16. And yeah, Landy, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk all things Final Fantasy 16.
And as
Hello,
for you,
everyone. Hello, everybody. This is Will's Word on the Landing Lodge again. Man, I got a lot of words, but unfortunately 90% of it is spoilers, so I'm not going to get into it. Yeah.
Don't worry. We'll bring you back. I figure, like, with a game like this, especially since it's like a 40, 50-hour campaign, like, at the least, you know, probably want to wait a month before you start putting, like, spoiler content out there. So don't worry, Will. We'll have you back in so you can give your full, unfiltered thoughts, spoiler and all. But just to get us started, maybe the first thing we can discuss is gameplay, because gameplay can be relatively spoiler-free. And again, look, these are games. We all love to be told a story, especially if you're here at the Lodge. Story content is a big thing that we do here. So let's just start with the gameplay. I don't know if either one of you want to lead off some of your gameplay impressions. How does it feel? How does it compare to other action games that you've played, such as Kingdom Hearts, Devil May Cry, God of War? And do you think this is an appropriate and necessary direction for the Final Fantasy series to be taking?
Take it away, Josh.
For sure. So going into this game, it truly was a treat. I stayed away from everything regarding this game for the last 6 months, any kind of new gameplay, anything outside of like the first couple trailers, because I just wanted to have everything be so new and just be completely surprised. And as someone who's played through the Devil May Cry franchise and someone who's a massive Kingdom Hearts fan, it just feels like a great combination between the two. Given I'm playing the game on like the graphical mode, I'm not playing it on performance mode. But like even then, it's I haven't had like a single just like worry with gameplay. They do such a great job with mixing your different abilities, you know, with whatever icon and combining that with your game style. It's felt so fluid for me, and there's like it's been incredible. Like I'm very, very happy with it. I know a lot of people would argue that it's not the right, you know, like way to go for Final Fantasy, etc., because it's not turn-based. And I'm a huge fan of turn-based. I'm not trying to like downplay that at all. But especially for where the series has been slowly heading towards, I definitely feel that like this it's a great move in the right direction for the franchise going forward. Even if it's just for mainline titles, because you can always have turn-based for side games, etc., etc. But in terms of where the series is headed, there's so many people who have just played the demo alone or watched people play the demo and they're like, you know what, I'm buying a PS5. And it's been people's their whole deal breaker to just buy a PS5. And I feel like that alone says a lot if this game is just causing you to go out and buy a PlayStation 5. And there's so many people that I know who've been playing this for the very first time and got their PlayStations for this reason. And they're like, if this is where the series goes, consider me a solid fan going forward. So I definitely feel like it's definitely a right step. It's a step in the right direction for the series going forward.
And how about you, Will? What
Well
are your
said.
general thoughts?
Just want to say, Josh, that was well said. I'm grinning ear to ear on that, and I got some big ears. So, for the sake of it, let's go into the history of, I guess, combat, Final Fantasy, and everything that's built into this beautiful, absolute nightmare of a game. So, with Ryuta Suzuki being the game combat directing helm, he's the guy who brought us the combat for Devil May Cry. I've been playing Devil May Cry since I was a wee lad because I hung out with friends who didn't care about the age rating. So got into that, and also thank you to my cousins who showed me DMC2, and then my ex showed me DMC3 back in the day. But 4 and 5 really brought it into focus for its combat. 5 being the greatest step forward that I've seen for a franchise in years, outside of like the biggest steps, I'd say, like for Resident Evil 7, The Village, like that was the biggest step forward for Resident Evil I'd seen. Devil May Cry 5 was that big step for that franchise, and I would say fervently that 16 is that big step for combat. That was not only needed but almost outright demanded, because turn-based is phenomenal. It is one of the building blocks of classic role-playing. It is still utilized in tabletop games to this day. I should know, I just did a huge event for it last month, but even got a cool t-shirt. But anyway, turn-based has its place. Heavy action has its place. Kingdom Hearts showed that you can merge the two and marry the two in a healthy manner, and it even, I guess, further expanded upon this by giving us one of our first major fights being Leon, the last major protagonist of Final Fantasy for the 20th century, and then Sephiroth at the end point. Spoilers for those that have not played Kingdom Hearts 1. You can fight Sephiroth. The big guy, the dude with the crazy sword and the crazy hair, you know? The last big time antagonist of the 20th century Final Fantasies. And you can kick the crap out of both of them. I mean, come on.
You can't ask for more
And
than
then
that.
further, oh yeah, beyond that. Then with Kingdom Hearts 3, especially with Remind, it brought it to a point where every final boss you fight in Kingdom Hearts, the first boss of the next game, you go up from. You very much do. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's beautiful. And you see that deeply with what the KH4 team has shown up with the brief teaser that we've gotten, and the fact that Tai Yasue's team is the one that contributed to Final Fantasy XVI. And then you got Platinum Games, who has dished out Nier Automata, Bayonetta, Avatar: Legend of Korra, all really solid kick-butt games. And they bring it here too. And you have all 3 of these major combat, I want to say, bombshells going off at once, quite literally. And it just works. Because one of the major directors here is the guy who directed the Final Fantasy V combat. And Final Fantasy V's combat is active time-based. And it's brilliant. And it's the highest point of job class system hybridization that we've seen in the franchise since. And we now have that with combat that puts Kingdom Hearts 3, Devil May Cry 5, and Nier Automata to shame in 16.
that is a
Ooh.
bold statement.
I would say that combat-wise and sake of sheer numbing scale, have either of you ever played Assure's Wrath? Let me phrase that.
I haven't.
Have you ever heard or seen anyone complete Assure's Wrath?
I've heard of it, but it's not anything I've tuned into.
Absurd. There was nothing like it until there's nothing like Assure's Wrath until I finished this game.
So, you mentioned at scale, and before I give my take, I think I just want to pick your brain a little bit more, given the very bold statement you made just there, which I may not necessarily disagree with. What is it in particular that you think elevates Final Fantasy XVI's combat above, say, its other Square Enix predecessors that you brought up?
Its immersion is one of the biggest ones, because one of the biggest, huge, draw-ins to this game is, in other games, you are summoning the primals, or the icons, or the espers, or the eidolons, or the aeons, or insert summon/phantom beast here. But in this game, you are the summon. And you feel that sheer visceral power that we've never felt before. For the sake of Final Fantasy's history, Bahamut, King of Dragons, the Big Lizard, the Big Bee, he is the one who gives you the class upgrade in Final Fantasy I. His variants go from able to take out an army to being your planet buster in some veins. And let us look no further to the power of the variants of Mega, Giga, and then, Zeta Flare. With a certain duck. Which, I know this is a brief tangent, but is it? You know how great it is to know that Donald Duck is still a decorated and, still, official member of the United States Navy?
Yeah,
You know how
officially
nutty that is?
not many. I mean, listen, if you could cast Zeta Flare, I don't know what Navy wouldn't want you in their ranks. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. He's also a good uncle. Big props to good uncles.
Mm-hmm. And he's a good nephew too. Just to give Scrooge a good little shout out.
As you should. That man knows how to make money and knows how to spend it wisely. And that's power in and of itself. But
go ahead.
Moving on from Final Fantasy I, you got the different variants of Bahamut that have come and gone, like Bahamut Zero from Final Fantasy VII. You've got, the Eidolons from 13. You've got have either of you played Type Zero?
Oh,
yes.
You're talking to the right guy over here with Josh.
Okay.
When it comes to
I
Type Zero.
love Type Zero.
Have you finished Type Zero?
Yes. I love it so much.
You too, Landy? Have you?
I know nothing of Type Zero, but you're free to spoil something. It's okay. It's okay. I can.
Alexander. I am just gonna say that. Alexander.
Oh.
Yeah. Big. Yeah. And and I'd say the final Aeons of Final Fantasy X are the strongest examples outside of the primals from 14, because those just get ridiculous, that we've seen out of summons outright. We kind of get a glimpse of it from the Foul Sea of 13, and we kind of get an inkling of it from less so than the ones from the Astrals of 15, just because of the fact that, unfortunately, 15 is an unfinished product. It is a broken blade, and there's no way to pull a Narsil out of this.
Yeah.
Or Anduril. But, yeah. There may be a Return of the King, but Verum is far away. Anywho.
Oh, yes.
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut on that, because we'll be here all day. You feel that power. You feel that burden. You feel you feel that crushing weight of the summons, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's very much it's got that Neon Genesis Evangelion vibe, which is really easy to screw up, and they did not screw it up this time. Very much so.
You talking about Type 0?
I'm talking about 16 in this case.
Oh, 16. Oh, okay. Because
Well-
I was like, I still need to watch Neon Genesis Evangelion, and so hearing that makes me even more
It's
excited.
on Netflix. It's on Netflix. So is Dad of Light, which is amazing. Made me cry.
Well, you know,
Big
it's
tears.
it's funny you draw the I guess the similarities between Evangelion and FF16. For me, I've seen it as like a hybrid of like, to me, it's been like this when you especially consider the summons and the icons, it's been like this hybrid of like Naruto, Game of Thrones, and then Final Fantasy. Especially Final Fantasy, the closer you get to the ending, which I find very funny. It's like the game like starts and you're in a very Game of Thrones type world, but the further you get into it, the more of that familiar Final Fantasy brand bleeds in, which I was a big fan of.
better and for
You know,
worse.
I've got no complaints about that. But I will say, I would echo a lot of the sentiments both you and Josh shared. You know, as far as the combat goes, you know, Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think, is probably my favorite action combat that I've taken part in. I know it's not full-blown action, you know, in the way that 16 is, because you have the ATB and you have those commands which work very much like a turn-based game, even though it is action and it feels like action while you're playing it. I don't know if I would prefer it to 7 Remake's combat just yet, but what I will say is, as far as just full-blown action, nothing but action, it's very hard to find something to compare this to, because like you said, one thing that for me is the freedom, that there's such a freedom with this combat, and it almost seems like the combos are limitless, which is funny because, and I would caution people who are in the beginning of the game where the combos probably feel very limited, especially when you only have 1 or 2 icons in your arsenal. But I will say is like, when you get to a certain point in the game, probably around the midpoint, the amount of combos you could string together and the amount of imagination you yourself can input into the combat, it really starts to feel limitless. And it's like, I catch myself in a constant battle of me just wanting to do what works and wanting to try new things. Because when you find certain combos that work and you find certain combat commands that work, it feels so good. And again, without getting into necessarily the icons and the summons, even when you're Clive in your base form, you feel very powerful. You feel very capable. You don't feel limited. So again, for me, I almost find myself getting caught doing a lot of the combos that I'm very successful with over and over, but then going, hey, I know that if I branch out and let myself experiment, that there are better combos that I'm yet to discover. And, you know, it takes some getting used to, you know, dodge being locked to R1. That's going to be very new for a lot of people. But at the same time, you get used to it very quickly. And when you consider the button layout that they've created for the controller, to me, it does make a lot of sense for R1 to be there. And I will say, too, I do like, and I'm starting to see this in a lot of games lately, even Tears of the Kingdom, which was a discussion last night here at the Lodge, that precision dodging is becoming so important in a lot of action games. And I will say, like, landing like consistent precision dodges in FF16 gives you such a feeling of freedom and gives you such a feeling of capableness, powerfulness. And before I continue this whole rant about base Clive, for lack of a better term, the icon battles, which Will, you were kind of getting into it about, like, hey, this could have been very easy to screw up. The icon battles are just like a whole other animal to themselves. And I expected it to almost be, and I don't mean this in a bad way, I expected the icon battles to be gimmicky. You know what I mean? Almost like bonus content. But I was very happily proven wrong as I got my hands on the game and got my hands on these icon battles. They're this whole other animal entirely. And I don't know. It's like, obviously I look forward to them when they pop up, but it's like when an icon battle ends, I'm almost sad because I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I like being this Godzilla type monster and wreaking havoc. And like you said, Will, you feel the weight of the icon. You feel the weight of your actions. And man, like there's some battles like I could say this: the Titan battle. When it's not giving anything away, by the way, that you're gonna battle these icons as the icon. That
Yeah,
should
it's
be
very
that should
obvious
be a
from the
given.
start.
So I will say, like the Titan battle and the Bahamut battle were just like
Are we allowed to talk about Bahamut?
My,
we.
my brother did those last night, and he was blowing my phone up, like, you got to get here already. Holy shit. Oh my God. Oh, and I was like, wow.
I guess, Will, to answer your question, we can talk about Bahamut. Let's not get into the specifics of like where that battle happens and what the consequences of that battle are. But I will
Of
say
course.
it was, to me, it was the best boss battle in the game so far, given I'm yet to get up to Odin. But I was blown away in particular by that Bahamut battle. Visually, it was stunning. Mechanically, it was smooth. And just, oh my Lord, like there was I won't get into it. There was an aesthetic choice in the Bahamut battle where I was like, I think that's a little bit too much. But it didn't take me out of the experience. I was still just so blown away by it. I don't know, Will, do you have any thoughts about Bahamut? And then maybe after Bahamut, Josh, you could talk about what your favorite icon battle has been so far.
Definitely.
So, like I said, I've gone through the game. I've got a lot of thoughts. Some stuff I'm allowed to talk about, some stuff I just can't yet. Bahamut is my favorite fight. Period. I like him more than Odin. I like him more than Titan. And I enjoyed fighting Garuda, which I have more to talk about the other dominants, but my only issue, I think, so far, is that we fight icons and we fight some of the dominants. There's a few other like small things about that I really wish we could have gotten a chance to scrap with a few certain people, just because it would be a jam, you know. But it is what it is. To that end, since both know that Bahamut is a thing, there are certain, I guess, iconic encounters that we get out of the Empire of Sembrick that I almost wanted to have more of. That I actually did want to have more of. You see, I guess, a prelude of it in the prologue with the Night of the Blinding Dawn. Which, what an intro for a boss.
Mm-hmm.
Because I looked at it and I thought, oh hey, Final Fantasy. Yeah, it was great. Because when my brain thinks of Final Fantasy, it immediately goes to one singular thing. Because every franchise has that singular moment. For Devil May Cry, it's Dante with his two guns saying jackpot. For Naruto, it's, for me, at least in particular, Rock Lee throwing down against Gaara.
Mm-hmm.
Or Pokemon, it's something inside Scarlet and Violet. I'm not allowed to talk about it yet, but it is what it is. For Final Fantasy, though, it is the Dragoon. It is that Lancer. It is that warrior high aloft in the sky, crashing down with all the speed and fury of God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is very apt because it's the Holy Empire Sandwich, so it works.
Mm-hmm.
And because, Heavensward was great. Yeah.
Heavensward was great, and by the way, it's so obvious this story was very heavily influenced by Heavensward.
Yep. I think I see that arguably the most with two particular characters, being Jill and then Dion.
Both phenomenal, by the way.
Yes. I got like a tiny spiel about each of the dominants outright, It would be all right if I talked about that real quick.
Sure.
Okay. Just top to bottom from the ones that we encounter.
Well, actually, before I guess I would actually like to move on to the dominance, but first, can we get Josh's thoughts on like his favorite boss battle so far?
Oh, of course, of course. My apologies.
No,
By
you're
all
good.
means, take it away, Josh.
You
Yeah,
don't
you're
don't
good.
apologize in the lodge. It's okay.
Sorry, they're forbidden. So, so like, I've only, I guess in terms of like icon battles, I've only gone past. I think it would be like the Ifrit versus Ifrit one because the last like battle I had as an icon was against Typhon, for the first like Mother Crystal, and um, even just like from the beginning, like when the game loads up and it's like right into that Phoenix versus Ifrit battle. I was just blown away. Like I couldn't even speak words. I kept like messing up and couldn't even like function straight because I was just like, this is unbelievable. Because like I mentioned before, I hadn't seen anything about this game for the last 6 months. So seeing
I
anything
just
with
want to
these
say,
icon battles,
Josh, I give you so much credit for that because I tried to do what you did, just staying away from all trailers, all information. And before I knew it, I was just like nose deep on the website, reading all the character profiles, wanting to know everything. So just want to say, I give you a lot of credit for abstaining, especially because I know what a big Final Fantasy fan you are. So it couldn't have
yeah.
been easy.
It was like there was one point where like with the whole Final Fantasy 16 event in Los Angeles, I was like, if I can manage to get that ticket in, like if I can manage to sign up and get in, that will be the one exception where I'll just let myself see everything for what I can see in that day. But I was like, if I can't, I'll wait. And then the demo comes out a week before, and I was like, this is gonna be the longest week ever that I have to wait for this game. The 6 months, it was like non-existent. I was like, oh wow, we're here, but this one last week, with this demo just being in my face. Like my brother played the demo and he pre-ordered it that exact same night. I was like, God.
Yeah, I
But
know a few people who did the same move.
That's what
yeah,
I did.
it's insane. But yeah, like and so it's like because of that, like, and I get like very overly excited about things that I love and I'm passionate in. So like when the scene, like when it just started up and you know that music starts kicking in and right
Mhm.
before you start pressing R1 to just start shooting fireballs at Ifrit, I was in tears. I was like, this feels unreal right now. Like I was just like I was having the time of my life. And so then when you get into, for example, the Ifrit versus what was the first one? Oh, the Garuda battle. That was insane. Like especially I thought like you had mentioned like I thought the icon battles at first they weren't going to be all that like and not in a bad way. Like I thought it was just going to kind of be purely kind of just like active time like boom R1 boom square. Like I didn't expect it to be as playable and just like where you're just full on controlling and just empowering that icon. And so just during the whole Garuda battle, like jaw was dropped. I was just like, holy hell. And it's like even like the times where you have to just button mash square to just literally beat the living hell out of Garuda or whatever. I'm just like, what am I playing right now? And it's like I've been playing Final Fantasy since I was 5 years old, and I've always dreamed of just like what would it be like to play as these summons instead of just pressing like, oh, boom, you summon, you know, Shiva, you summon this, you summon that. So it was just like it was like a dream come true for me. And to not get in too much, the Ifrit versus Ifrit, the truth part that I was
So
screaming
anime.
Kino at I was screaming Kino at my screen and I was like out of my seat standing up and just going at it. And so far as to where I'm at, I think that's like my favorite moment so far between just like the battles. The Typhon battle was really cool. I thought it was like a really like nice little battle. That part destroyed me though. I can't go too much about that. But yeah, it truly has just like blown me away with how like in depth a lot of these battles get, and even like the act like the on screen like prompts, the L1 and stuff, like even those are satisfying and those are like super fun to just press L1 and then just see the events unfold just from that one specific little button press. Like it feels like you're playing an action movie but you're like still heavily involved to where it's not you're just pressing a button here, a button there. Like you just like Will was saying, you feel the embodiment of just being that icon. It's insane.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really couldn't agree more with any of that. And and we'll see. I'm interested in giving like the hard mode a try. I will say I do wish the to put it in Kingdom Hearts terms, the reaction commands. I wish there was a smaller window of time. I do think they're a little too generous with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does feel good, and it's good too, right? Because like I feel like so often when you play a lot of action games and you get into those cinematic clashes, you almost put the controller down and you almost like you're paying attention, but you're kind of on your heels leaning back. What I love so much about this game is when you're in these big boss battles and like the cinematic clashes happen, you almost like lean forward now because you're waiting for it any moment. Any moment it could hit you, man. So I love it. I just want more of that. So with
That
all
was
that
me
said,
at first. I would just sit back, have my controller on my lap, and then it's like R1. I'm like, oh god, nearly dropping my controller on the floor. Like, oh god, press this button.
But I guess with all that covered, if you guys maybe want to get into talking about the dominance, if you maybe want to go one by one, I know Will, you wanted to get us started on that.
Yes, I would. But before we finish the icon talk, I just got this. Every single icon fight feels like it could have been an end-game final fight in its own right, and that's kind of
It's
brilliant.
insane. Yeah, it's like every time you get to one, you're just like, oh, this is insane. This like how does it get any better? And then it gets better. Like they're just like, oh no, you haven't seen anything yet. You haven't played anything. Like I love just how in depth these battles get.
And let's just take a minute.
Very much so.
Let's just take a minute to consider that the Kingdom Hearts team apparently primarily helped them with the boss battles. So if you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, that should give you a lot to look forward for Kingdom Hearts 4, because these boss battles have been some of the best I've ever played in any game, man.
Yeah, like my brother's like semi fairly new to Final Fantasy. Like he's only played Dirge, 7 remake, and 15, and he loved all of those, and so he's been heavily addicted to 16, but he's played all the Kingdom Hearts games. Like he's a bit more familiarized with Kingdom Hearts. And so when I relate to him that like the team helped out with those, he's like, oh, I can see it. He's like, I can definitely see like where the Kingdom Hearts touch is at, and I'm just like, oh, I love hearing that. Like it's like there's times as well where I can see it, especially with a specific icon ability. We were talking about it not too long ago. I was like, oh, there comes that. That's where that little touch is at.
That is very apt. Something just connected proverbially in my brain.
Spill it. Spill the beans.
The combat with Clive. It is exactly what you get once you master Sora in Kingdom Hearts 3 and 3 Remake.
I could see that. I think could you go into a little more detail? I think I know what you mean.
Yes. So, I don't know if this counts as spoilers or not, but you wield the power of icons from doing battle with their dominance. Well, not all of them, fortunately, but most of them. And as such, you obtain their powers. Can't go full icon mode with all of them, sadly, but you still do a lot of kick butt stuff. Getting into it, there are certain flavor beats, like the fists of Titan, talons of Garuda, the wings of Bahamut, the mantle of Shiva, so on and so forth. It has that same vibe with the form changes you wield with the Keyblade. As every time you wield the Keyblade, it functions as the base set for the longsword that Clive wields. And it is after a certain point that you shift it up into either icon abilities or form change, which, you see those parallels, which is really funny because, Bahamut, and then you have the High Wind with the Wheel of Fate for the Caribbean, which, I mean, again, big Dragoon vibes, and that's always nice. But you've got those parallel points, and you have the apex of Sora's combat, which is arguably Ultima Weapon. And then you also have the zenith of Clive's combat, which is redacted. Because I can't talk about it. But like both of those high points are wow. And then you realize we can only go up from here.
Yeah.
And that's both awesome and terrifying, because if the boss battles for the icons and the dominance in 16 were helmed by the KH4 team, I mean, we still have the foretellers to deal with, and we don't really know how they truly fight. And they're all named after pins from The World Ends With You. So, just saying.
So who knows where that goes?
I kind of do, but it would be speculation, and I like to deal with facts, not theories.
Fair enough.
Can't make bricks without clay.
So do you want to get into the dominance? Yes. Let's do it. Let's go one by one,
Awesome.
maybe. We'll go one by one, each kind of give our thoughts on them.
Of course.
Obviously, I can't speak on Odin yet. I haven't gotten up to fighting him. But,
I can.
And Josh, what's the last icon you battled?
I guess technically in terms of, well, no, because you don't with Titan, it's a bit different.
Mhm.
So I guess the last icon I like full on battled was Ifrit.
Okay. So then, I mean, that means, correct me if I'm wrong, Will, that means he really he would miss out on Bahamut and Odin?
Yeah, he hasn't gotten there yet, and if my memory serves correctly, because unfortunately I've been awake for 6-ish hours, maybe more. Did I fall asleep? I don't know. Anyway, your final fight with Titan is just insane. Just putting that there. But if you just fought the Infernal icon, that means you're like, I would say you're about a third in, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
So far as my memory is to say.
Yeah, it's somewhere with a third, 40%, maybe hovering around halfway.
Yeah, I think I'm about like 29, 30 like quests in terms of mainline. I think I'm like on the 29th or 30th. And I think there's like,
I mean, you can sort of gauge the game's progression by the mother crystals.
Yeah, and I've just recently done the first one.
So you're about 20%.
Yeah, I think like in terms of Clive's battle level, I think I'm like 30 as well, so that's like a good.
You're getting there.
Point. Yeah,
I'm going
to be playing
bro.
more like
juiced.
directly right after this.
I mean, I my level I ended at 60, but that's me. I'm paranoid. Well, 60 adjacent. You get my meaning.
I got you. So Garuda. Let's start there.
You first, Josh.
Refresh my brain. What about Garuda? Sorry.
Oh, we're basically just giving our general thoughts. We could talk about Garuda, Benedicta, just your general take on the character, on the fight, the abilities. We're just kind of go one by one through the dominance. Basically, this is the part we've spoken a lot about gameplay and how this will affect the Final Fantasy series moving forward. I think now is a good time we can kind of talk about the characters, our impressions of them, what we think of them, again, without getting too spoilery. So if you want to take the reins on Garuda, Benedicta, and get us started, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, so from the start, it was kind of just like, I was like, especially just like with how her character was, like she's portrayed as like one of the villains and that you come across. And I was like really interested in her character because I was like, despite what we had seen, I felt like there was a lot more depth just to her character, why she is the way she is and all that. And then, you meet Sid, of course, along the way, and then things happen where you find out a bit more about Benedicta, and especially when she turns into Garuda, that like little flashback scene that happened, I was like, oh, like I was really enjoying. Well, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute.
He's got a bit of a cold,
Sorry.
so he's got that cough
Yeah.
mute button.
So yeah, so I was like really excited because I was like, oh cool, we're like learning more about her character. I was really, really enjoying like the backstory we got. And at one point I was just like, I wish we learned more about her. But it was like when you're facing Garuda just, as Clive, just little Clive himself, that battle alone was really, really cool. I was hold on, good lord.
Bless our man, he's under the weather.
Of course it starts to come when I'm like talking.
Haha,
What's it called?
you said weather, and she uses wind. Oh,
So like once that initial battle ended, I was like, nah, that ain't it. That ain't it. There's more to it. And then, Clive channels E3, and then boom, it's E3 and Garuda. That whole battle itself was so sick, especially when like it wasn't something as simple as just like, oh, again, the reaction commands. Like it was just like, oh, empowering Titan, press this, press that, do this, and I was like, oh, let's go. And I think it was like really well executed, like especially the like the choreographed parts where you would be in battle and then it would go flawlessly into cutscene and then stuff would happen and then it would be like, oh, just a heads up, you got a button to press, and then you would do that command and it would just seamlessly flow right back into cutscene, and it would just it would go all beyond that. And hold on. And it was like even down to like the points where like their body parts would just like dismantle and they're just like, oh, let me just grow this arm back real fast. And I was just like, this is wild, this is wicked.
mhm.
And it was like just like even down to just like when you vanquish it, it's like, oh, Garuda slain, whatever. um
That's actually a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
it was, they really like put their all into each, kind of like what Will said, like each icon battle feels like an endgame boss. Like you can tell they just put their absolute all into these battles, and each one they just were like, let me elevate this a little bit further. And but yeah, like I really enjoyed, hold on.
Our poor dude. Our poor dude.
Yeah.
Somebody
worry,
get him
Dino here.
an elixir, please.
You'll get your second wind, I'm sure.
I get it.
But yeah, I really enjoyed like Benedicta's like storyline up to where we got to. I really thought like her character, the Garuda, like I really thought that they really did like an excellent job with that whole character, the icon up until the battle, and then of course obtaining that icon. Yeah, it was insane. I loved it so much.
Yeah,
Very well said.
I have a lot to say about Benedicta and Garuda, mostly because I think she was the perfect way to start this journey. Like she was the perfect initial antagonist. And I don't want to get into too much detail because that's when we get into spoiler territory. And I do eventually want to do a video on it. But like Benedicta is sort of like this microcosm to, let's just put it in terms of Clive's family's macrocosm. There's a lot of mirroring behaviors between her and somebody else without getting into detail. So, that it was just such a great way to introduce everything. And again, a perfect first opponent for Clive. Again, because it's sort of like, if you can defeat her, then again, it's so tough without getting into spoilers. But anyway, again, I agree with a lot of what you said, Josh. And, that first icon battle showing that they're really, geez, now are you getting me sick, Josh? Are you getting me sick
just
from
passing you
cyberspace,
through.
dude?
It's the blight.
It's the blight. It spreads. It spreads.
Oh, there was one thing I wanted to add on. It was kind of like what you just said. where like she was like a good first opponent for Clive, because like without getting too into it, you see Benedicta kind of just like hold herself to just Garuda, where like if she didn't have Garuda, she just like she could not be herself. And then you have
Dude.
Clive, who was so just like I'm not Ifrit, and was completely just like there's no way that can be me. And so it was almost kind of like
Oh,
polar opposites,
that's a
and it
great point.
reflected so well.
Yeah, that's a
Well
great
said.
point. It's almost like an inverted mirror of one another.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is a really good point. And I just want to say, like, one of the things, just to get off Benedicta for a minute and talk about Clive for a second. Actually, you know what? We'll do that. We'll do all the icons first, then we'll talk about Clive and Jill. But just to get back to Benedicta and Garuda, they did a really good job with her. And just to go off on what you were saying, Josh, the moment you sort of take Garuda away from her, like you see this woman who held herself so pompously, so confidently, so like she almost seemed just unbreakable. And then you just take that little piece away from her, and she just becomes like this desperate, groveling, like pathetic, like it was just something else to see, dude, where you're just like, wow.
it was heartbreaking too.
In a way, because I was like, I can't wait to slay this bitch. But
Yeah, and then that happened, and I was like, oh, I kind of feel bad, but not really.
like, yeah, I feel it a little bit. You feel a little bad because you're like, damn, like she was on top of her game an hour ago, but look at her now. But it was just, again, like the opposite, an inverted mirror to Clive. So again, like she really was presented to me as like this perfect opponent to really kick the game off. And I guess that's all I had to say about that. But again, I just thought it was such a great way to really kick things off.
So, guess it's time for my turn. Benedicta Harmon, Garuda. Brilliant way to start off when it comes to the iconic antagonist forces that we encounter. Brilliant because the fact that prior to incorporating the icons, they long debated about incorporating the job class system and switching it off that way, much in the vein of what you would do for Final Fantasy V.
Mm-hmm.
You see that with how wield Garuda's power. You see that with how Benedicta does kind of come off as that rogue type, an intelligencer, a spy, someone who plays everyone except the person that's playing her. And forgive the vulgarity, but this is a really brilliant joke. Benedicta's Benedict to everyone except those that have been a dick in her. It's true.
Can you just say that one more time? Can you say that one more time? Repetition is the hammer of knowledge. You just
Yes, it is. So Benedicta's Benedict to everyone except those who have been a dick in her. Which, like, arguably has been 3 people. So, to that end, she's a brilliant parallel to everything horrible in Ballastia.
Yeah.
And you see that she could have been saved. But she did not take the hand that was offered. Or rather, she let go of it.
That's a good point. Yeah, I forgot about that. That Sid does try to show her another way.
I don't know if this counts as spoilers, but there's a character later on in the Hideaway. She's shown up already before. Can I talk about Mid? Am I allowed to talk about Mid?
Josh, actually, I think maybe we shouldn't.
Okay, then I'll
If
shelve
it's
that
not
for
giving
later.
too much away, you can go ahead and say a little bit. Like if you know a way to like word it to where it's not giving too much away, I'm fine with that.
Shared physical similarities. That's it.
Oh my lord. I see what you mean. I
Indeed.
see what you mean. And I think anyone who's gotten up to that point should pick up on that too.
Yep. But yeah, she's the embodiment of all of the for lack of a better term, the sociological issues within Valisthea, how they treat the branded, how people treat the dominants, how we've seen how Sambrick functions. We've seen how Rosaria functions. We've seen how Dalmec functions in kind of the Iron Kingdom, but not really. Waloed, as it stands, is that dominant force that I have to hold off on that till we get to Barnabas. But just you see the glimpse of sheer coordinated power from Waloed and Benedicta, and you see that they were real close to win, to the full win, to the checkmate. It's scary.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of that now where I'm up to as well.
Yeah. But in summary, Benedicta. She's snarky. She's fragile. She's kind of hot, though. Bird Mom is cool.
She is kind of hot. No doubt about that.
Yeah. She'll take your breath away.
Yeah, but probably not in the way that you want. Probably because there's a talon going through the back of your heart.
Oh yeah, no, she very stab happy. Very.
Hey, some people are into that.
I don't know. I've dealt with far too many harpies in my day. I'm good.
She is quite a harpy, which is definitely intentional.
Oh.
Definitely intentional. Do you have anything left for good old Benedicta before we move on?
I got a couple of jokes, but they're spoiler related, so never mind.
Fair enough. Okay. And I guess we're gonna skip over as far as dominance go. We'll save Clive, Jill, Joshua for last. So I think the next one in line, correct me if I'm wrong, would it be Hugo? Would it be Titan?
I'd say so.
Okay. So I guess I could go first on this one, I guess. So Hugo's a big old simp. I like the character. I think the character was done pretty well, but I did not expect him to be such a simp. You know what I mean? I didn't think but I get it because his motivations, whether they have to do with Benedicta or not, seem to have always been shallow, right? So for him and his place in the Dalmekian Republican Army, he's like the lead economic advisor. So obviously he used that position to curb things towards his own advantage. It seems to me like his motivations were always very shallow, very money-based, very power-based, very bureaucratically based. And to him, I suppose Benedicta provided an escape from that. Like Benedicta was almost something that was, having a relationship with another human being is always going to be more rewarding than any sort of political position you hold, any sort of money you acquire. So it kind of makes sense to me because he lived in a world where probably nobody loved him. The whole parliament in Dalmekia, for lack of a better term, they didn't really like him. They were just more afraid of him and what he was capable of and found him useful because they could wield Titan's power to their advantage. But Benedicta, again, and it makes sense why he was such a simp for her, was in some regards an escape from that. And he even mentions at one point, like, she promised him the two of them had plans to kind of rule the realm. So, all things considered, he was a good character. And I gotta say, like, I really like it when a game can have me so looking forward to kicking someone's ass. You know what I mean? And, Clive, for all intents and purposes, I like to say he's a moral man where circumstances lead him to doing immoral things, like killing, slaughtering. And he addresses this himself at some point in the game. But man, like him and Hugo were just like two opposites. You know what I mean? They were like,
yes.
Whereas Garuda was sort of this inverted mirror in terms of how they relate to an icon. Seriously, Hugo and Clive were sort of this just mirror in not just like physical appearance, right? Like Clive is well built. He's muscular, but he's very lean, whereas Hugo is more of a brute. Clive's got these long locks of hair. Hugo's got the whole like buzz cut going on. Clive has these greater ambitions, whereas Hugo sort of is a little bit more shallow in his ambitions. And I just want to say, like, one parallel I really enjoyed is, it's not giving anything away. Clive and Jill are romantically intertwined. And again, you have, Kevin's dropping in the chat, opposites attract, fire and ice. Shiva, Ifrit, fire and ice, Clive and Jill. Hugo and Benedicta, you had ground and air.
Wind and air.
Wind and air, exactly. It was sort of like a similar parallel in that way. And just to see, I thought it was very cool, without giving away the specific scene, how much Clive haunted Hugo after he learned the truth. Initially, he had his eyes set on Sid, but it's kind of funny to see how that comes into fruition later with Clive. But then when he diverts from Clive when he learns the truth, it's just like, damn, man. I don't know. Hugo to me was just very well handled. Just in a way that it's like, I just love it when a game can motivate me to want to kick somebody's ass. And like, I really wanted to kick Hugo's ass. And again, you have this big brute, very powerful. He's an icon, titan, powerful position in Dhalmekia. And then just to see him throw temper tantrums like a baby, I don't know. It's just like, he's
Well, that's what happens when your mommy gets taken away from you. And with that, I will be right back. Be right back.
Okay, Josh, do you want to maybe take it away, give your thoughts on Hugo so far?
Yeah, because I was like, how do I pitch it? 'Cause, like, I haven't seen much of him outside of like the beginning scene with him and Benedicta, and then really, like when he finds out with whatever is delivered, and I from that moment already, because like I didn't know, I had a feeling he was the tie-in icon, but I was kind of just like, I was so out of the loop. I was like, is he someone? But like when he found out, I was like, oh, this dude's about to just full on have that Jimmy Neutron brain blast moment and then just turn into friggin' tie-in. But I can tell that, because like you kind of like how you said, like he was aimed towards Sid, and I had already theorized like, oh, he's gonna find out it wasn't Sid, it was Clive. So I'm waiting for those events to unfold. But like I feel like his character, as from what I've seen, has been handled really well. Especially just from that one scene alone, just seeing him already be so just infuriated and just starting to grieve just because of what happened to Benedicta. Like I got chills because I was like, wow. I'm like not even just for him. All of the voice actors did phenomenal. Like especially
Yeah.
Ben for Clive, bone chilling performance. Like they really nailed it with the VAs for this game. But yeah, so far from what I've seen with Hugo, I'm excited to see more of him and how things between him and Clive will unfold. But I think so far from what I've seen, I think he's being handled really well. I think we haven't seen much of him for a reason, because they're saving him for, kind of what it seems like what you're talking about, like how with like Clive haunting him, the events leading up to that, up into the battle. So I'm really excited just to see like when he becomes more active on screen and becomes more of a problem for Clive.
Yeah, he's an exciting character to watch, and I guess I would just echo your sentiment that the voice acting in this game is so tremendous. Maybe I'm being a little too ambitious with this claim, but I think it's the best voice acting I've ever heard in a video game. Period.
Oh, 100%. Like I tried being like, oh, like there might be weird moments, whatever, but or like it's not delivered all too well. But like every single time, the VAs really go out of their range and express any kind of emotion, whether it's grief, sadness, anger. Like it's literally bone chilling. Like I get chills, and I'm just like, damn, like that dude had bills to pay. Like, that dude really gave it his all.
And it's crazy to consider too that like all these voice actors, they did all this work like 3 years ago. They've been sitting on it. You know what I mean? That must have been so hard for
That's
them
wild.
just to be sitting on those
That's
performances
wild.
for years.
Damn. I didn't realize that they were just sitting on those for 3 years, just waiting
Mm-hmm.
for everything else to just be animated, done, everything in between.
Oh yeah.
That's wild.
But yeah, Hugo is he was an
I'm
interesting
back.
he's an interesting character. You're back? Okay, do you want to give your spiel on Hugo?
Yes. So, if in the proverbial chess match that is the War of the Icons in Valisthea, Benedicta is a pawn, an effective pawn that almost became the queen, but a pawn nonetheless. Hugo Kuka is a self-made man. He was a standard rank-and-file soldier until he awoke to the powers of the Dominant of Earth, thus becoming, the Dominant of Titan. He used that, and with some political acumen and cunning guile, to position himself in such a place where he was involved with the Battle of the Twin Realms. He was involved prior to that. Well, after that, he's the main advisor to the Republic. Men kill for a lot of things. We kill for money, sport, the hell of it, faith, war, patriotism. But for love, a man can move mountains. And I think that embodies Hugo Kuka a very completely. As, like you've said, his power gave him opportunity, but it isolated him. His main base of power is in a very particular spot in the Republic that I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about.
Let's maybe just hold off just to be safe.
Okay. But yeah, it's in a very isolated point. And he is the man on top of the proverbial mountain. To that end, the sky is the limit. So having someone like Benedicta, who not only has the snark and the cunning to match wits with him, but also have that power of a dominant, you get that immediate connection. You see that whilst Benedicta may have been playing him, so far as Hugo is concerned, call him a simp, call it what it is. It was a one-sided love. And like I said, for love, a man will lose. He will march into hell. He will walk through a blizzard. I should know, I did the third one. So, and it's a powerful thing. And to have that love taken from you, yeah, no, it's powerful, it's palpable, it's sad, it's brilliant, it's a Titanic story beat.
Hey.
I was going to say his heart will go on, but that also works.
But if anything, I guess that's one thing that can be redeeming about Hugo, and I guess that's one thing I like too. That even though like a lot of these icons we do battle with, some are worse than others, some are more redeeming than others, but every single one does have a redeeming quality. Save for Odin, I don't know too much about Odin and good old King Barney yet, but as far as Hugo goes, like you're saying, you could be motivated by worse things than love. There are worse things. Like if Clive jacked his bank account and that's why he went nuts, that's one thing. But when the woman you love is killed, and I don't want to spoil how he found out necessarily, but when you find out the way he found out, like you almost can't blame a dude for reacting the way he reacted. It does make him somewhat redeemable, because again, there are worse things you could kill for than love.
Yeah. If not redeeming, then certainly understanding. Because he goes from the boulder is conflicted to the boulder is no longer conflicted.
Mm-hmm.
and it shows with his actions, and it's powerful.
Yeah, all in all, he's not my favorite. I think there are a lot of characters that are stronger than him. Not in the sense of battle combat, but just in presence and their arc and motivations. But he was a good character. I think it was a good way to keep the story moving. And I think the next one is next on the docket is Dion and Bahamut.
Before we get to that, can I talk about his, I guess, Titan combat stuff? Not fighting him, but what you get when you have Titan.
Yes.
Briefly.
Just if you will excuse me, I am going to quickly run to the little icon room. You know what I mean?
Hey, that's what I just did.
Yeah.
The icon.
Ooh, did not mean to do that.
That's all right.
Bye, Landy.
Everybody can see our Discord conversation now.
Hello.
Okay.
Messages have been leaked.
There we go. Yeah, it's been leaked. We've been exposed. Will, your technical
Oh no, you can
difficulties
find
in the
me
pre-roll
literally anywhere.
have been exposed.
If you know
I'll be
what
right back.
if you know what I look like,
Keep it
I'm
rolling,
not hard
boys.
to. I'm not hard to. Really not. So, for the sake of combat, for the icons when you get them, like I said before, with Garuda, that's your rogue class, that's the thief class, ninja, pretty much. Especially how you get with Garuda once you max it out. With Titan, I would say it's real close. I would say Monk, outright Monk, because A, fists, and B, you have that hard counters with it in the Wrathful Fist mechanic, kind of like the shield in Kingdom Hearts 3, that works, but leans into its offensive capability so much that you can one-man army a good chunk of your fights with Titan alone, and it shows. And then you have just the power that Titan yields. His is the power that is stronger than the foundation of the earth. In theory, to the level you see, had Hugo, like if you have all that power and all the control for it, I don't think there was anyone really that could have stopped him. But save for circumstance. Because one of the very few outright limitless resources on the planet is, well, Earth, so to speak. Which leads to another topic about another icon that I can't talk about, but it is what it is. But yeah, Hugo. He was a rock, he was an island.
Yeah, well, listen, no man can survive as an island, and maybe that's why he was so desperate for Benedicta. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know. She was easy on the eyes. He was clearly the little lamb of that dynamic. While she was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Which is sad when you think about it.
Yep. But are we ready to move on to Bahamut and Dion?
I am.
So I will say, because I don't want to get into it too much, especially since Josh hasn't gotten up to here yet. But I will say,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, I've only seen them outside of that one scene with Bahamut versus Odin, and so I'm like, other than that, like I have like no big. Because at first in my head I go, is that I'm like, did Joshua just somehow survive and that's him? And I was like, no, they call him a different name. I'm like, that's not him. So at first I was like, oh, this is interesting. So it's like I don't really have a whole lot to go off of other than like I'm just really excited to meet their characters, and the events are gonna unfold between those two.
Yeah, and I will say, hold on, before I say it, do you know who Bahamut's dominant is yet, Josh?
I'm not sure about the name, but I think, is it Bahamut? Is because there's one of them where he almost kind of looks like the main character for one of the for Final Fantasy 14, the one that's kind of like portrayed on the artwork. I think that is him because I know that the
That's
blonde
Odin.
one.
That's gonna be
Yeah,
Odin.
that'd be
Okay,
Odin.
that's Odin. Okay, so I think
Barnabas,
the blonde guy is
Okay.
Bahamut.
Dion
Okay,
That's what I'm
Lesage.
assuming.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. It's very, very, very light in spoiler territory, but I wanted to make sure that you at least could put that together so that we didn't give that up. But I will say,
Yeah, out of meeting everyone and knowing like I guess who's left we have yet to meet, I was like, these two are one of the other. So yeah,
Yeah.
that I kind of was like I pieced together in my head.
well, I'll say this again, save for Odin because I still got to learn a little more about Prince Barney over there, and I won't stop calling him Prince Barney. But anyway, King, excuse me, King Barney. Oh, I've disgraced him. Blasphemy. Anyway, Prince Dion, Bahamut's dominant. Probably my favorite character among those dominants, among Benedicta, Hugo, Dion, and Barnabas. Dion's got to be my favorite because, like, again, without getting into detail, I really, really felt for him when his story unfolds. Like, I really feel for him. Like, and let's just say again, without getting into too much detail, like, his family dynamic runs parallel with Clive's, but goes in a different direction. And it's just so hard to watch. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I found myself really feeling for the guy. Whereas, like, with Benedicta and Hugo, I'm like, yeah, I kind of understand where they're coming from. I understand why they feel that way. Yeah. With him, I was just like almost heartbroken. I was like, man, to go through what he's going through right now, I don't know, man. It's to me, he's been handled exceptionally well. I pass it to you, Will. Do you have any thoughts on him that you'd like to share?
Yes, many opinions. So I've said it before. I got my small things about certain narrative beats with 16, like in the same vein of 10. You thought Clive was the main character, but it was really me, Dion. Just kind of that's how I feel in the later half of this game. Period. His story is very compelling, arguably one of the three most compelling in game, in my opinion.
I would agree.
He's the this is said outside of lore, like in this, you can look it up online on his page on the main site, that he is the leader of the Dragoons, which is an immediate plus for me.
So metal.
Dragoon supremacy.
Legions of Dragoons. Not just the Dragoons, legions of Dragoons. And, like, that's no small feat because, like, Dragoon, like, the military occupation of Dragoon is still a thing in the modern world. And there the U.S. military has a couple of groups that are called the Dragoons, and they are one of the two most terrifying military forces that we possess. Period. So that's big. Beyond that, like I said, if the paradigm, if the point of view shifted in any way, shape, or form, Dion would be the main character. It would either be him, Jill, or Sid, or some combination of the three. And Naoki Yoshida has even stated that Bahamut is his favorite summon. Which, I mean, it's the classic, it's the OG, it's the King of Dragons, the Platinum Lord. You know what I mean?
And it
For
shows.
the sake of D&D.
It shows in the way the character was handled. A lot of love.
And we talked Zetaflare already. Are we allowed to talk Zetaflare?
Let's not. Just to be safe.
Later, then.
Later.
But, yeah. Beyond that, I think just we get to fight a Dragoon in the beginning, you know, the Night of the Blinding Dawn. And gosh darn it, when you see a dragoon, you just think, oh, Mr. Final Fantasy, hello, how are you? Can I get you a coffee and bake you a cake? You
I
know?
popped off there because the first thing I thought was Final Fantasy IV. Like I instantly was like, they did not do that. The little like subtle references and stuff. Like, it's so good. Sorry, continue.
Oh no, it's very true. To that end, like again, like I said, it went without saying, his stories, it feels everything that Matsuno is known for. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Good old Yasmat, who I don't know if he participated in the development of this story, but it feels it. You feel the Matsuno isms in this game, and you see it arguably the most with Dion and Jill.
I would agree.
And I love it. I love it. When it comes to Bahamut, when you get it, I was thinking we were gonna get a different class parallel. I thought we were gonna get the full-on just Dragoon. We don't. Kind of sucks. But what we get is your Summoner White Mage hybrid, and I love it because it's everything that was brilliant about A Realm World. And I'll leave it at that.
Very well said. Very well said.
And I guess my final words on Dion: pretty boy with problems. Yeah.
He is a pretty boy with problems. Some very, very tough ones that I thankfully can't relate to. But yeah, it's a tough family dynamic he's got going on there.
Game of Thrones isms, to be sure.
Oh yeah. So I think the last one before we move into Clive, Jill, Sid, Torgle is Odin, King Barnabas, who to me has been where I'm up to. I haven't had my big fight with him yet. Won't give away what happens before his big fight. But this is another example that I was bringing up with Hugo where I'm like, I desperately want to kick this man's ass. They've done it. They've awakened the Ifrit-like fires within me are burning to kick the shit out of this guy. And I love that they did that. He's a very interesting character who certainly has his own issues that aren't worth getting into just yet. But he plays the strongman very well. Like that villain that is hard to eclipse. They play that very well with him, especially when you consider that like he spent so much of this game, for lack of a better term, minding his own business, biding his time, waiting for the right time to step in. And it's just like, you almost feel like you're getting into a groove and you're taking out this dominant and this dominant and this dominant and this dominant. And then you bump into him and you're just like, this is a brick wall, isn't it? And that's all I can really offer. Because I'm not quite there yet. Josh, I know you haven't gotten up to that point yet. So Will, is there anything you could offer us about good old King Barney?
Very much so, but before I get into it, Josh, is there anything you want to say?
I am completely unaware or anything for this, so yeah, the floor is yours.
Okie dokie then. Or rather, I should say R. Because, damn it, why isn't Barnabas a pirate? Because, think about this. This dude, so for the sake of it, if you look up on the website, this is baseline knowledge, he washed ashore on Valisthea, awoken to the power of Odin, and dominated, sacked, waged war, and took over the entire continent of Ash. Now, as so far as history is, there are like 3 predominant people that have ever done something like that. Now, so far as just like history goes, like Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, Napoleon Bonaparte. There is another, but I'm not going to talk about that because World War II was really. But, and also the person in question was a mass murdering psychopath. But still, the dude conquered a continent. He, at the apex of his strength, had 2 other dominants on his payroll.
Huh. Good point.
He had the Iron Hair. He has the Royal Knights, who the Royal Knights are to him as the shield, as the first shield of Rosaria is to the Phoenix. So, like in the vein of it, the first shield is blessed with the power of the Phoenix. So, the Royal Knights, the highest echelon of them, which is there's a handful, and of which we meet 1. Because the rest of them were dead. Spoilers. One of them alone can contest with a dominant. And Odin's power is nothing to joke at because, for the sake of history within Final Fantasy, Odin is one of the few real deal Holyfield summons that you get. Zontetskin / Zanmoto, if you use Jimbo in Final Fantasy X, is the thing you do when you are just no longer amused with it. You know? Zontetskin is forgive me for the vulgarity, is the fuck around or fucking find out button. It really is. And Barnabas embodies that. Now, later on, there is, behind the great conquering king, there is that fragility. There is that fragileness to him, the chink in the unbreaking armor of the Iron Hair. But I won't get into that because, but if I had things my way, he would be the main antagonist. Let's just leave it at that. He would be the main antagonist, if not the final antagonist, because of the way things go, and that the War of the Icons, in my opinion, feels not just a war of these great titanic powers that can level continents, but it is very much a war between. And human nature, man's nature, is one of warring for money, resources, love, and in some cases, faith. Love can make a man move mountains. Faith can make a man. Faith followed through produces miracles. And there is nothing you can do to break a man with faith. I say that from personal experience.
That's an interesting take. If Odin were to be, quote unquote, the final boss, there is something about that I find compatible with the way the story has gone.
Thank you. I don't like but I also don't like the final boss in this game. I can't talk about it, but
next time, buddy. Next time.
Yeah, let's move on.
We'll make another swing around. Let's move on to Clive, Jill, Torgle, and Sid. Which
I do got one final thing.
Oh, go for it. Sorry. Shoot before we take off.
For the sake of combat, because you gotta come back to the combat in this game.
Mm-hmm.
When you Odin, because you do get Odin, it shows it in the trailer. It is a brilliant Dark Knight Samurai combination with just a touch of Dragoon, as you can wield Gungnir. But the Dark Knight Samurai is the most palpable exercise in power in this game. Like, Josh, you said you've played Devil May Cry, right?
Yeah.
Have you played Devil May Cry there, Landy?
No, sir, but you don't need to withhold any DMC information from me. I would like to play it one day, but it's not on the docket as of right now.
Okay, so Virgil, is who I'm going to bring up. Virgil, son of Sparta. One of the best rival characters you will ever find in a game, period, along with Jetstream Sam from Metal Gear Rising Revenge. It feels with that level of just sheer, unbridled, standing unrivaled power. And good golly, Miss Molly, do I appreciate that.
Good golly, Miss Molly.
Yes. Not the most apt, not the most eloquent thing I could think of, but I could see a game. I could see a Final Fantasy title where you begin with the power of a Dark Knight. Similar to this, and similar to the vein of, like, say, Cecil from Final Fantasy IV, where you are going through this horrible, dark road of conquest. And you get that redemption, and you change from Dark Knight to Paladin, and then you reclaim the crystals. You reclaim the crystals back from the darkness you yourself set in. Imagine that. And I would love to see that in the frame of the combat that you get from Odin. Because that Odin's combat prowess in this game alone, when you get it, are enough for me to say I want a Final Fantasy title where you get this at the word go.
I cannot wait to see what you mean.
Oh yeah, no. Odin's always been like the holy crap, what is that? Oh my gosh, I'm dead. We're all dead. Back in the early days of 14 of Realm Reborn, I started in Gridania back in the day. Just a wee archer trying to figure things out because I was lost and I hated using the map. Wandered through the Black Shroud one day, saw a big duty, saw just a swath of people, like the highest echelon of Sorcerer's Raiders at the time, and I saw them battle a dude on a black horse with a brilliant blade. And I got involved for the briefest of moments, and everyone died.
Oh, shit.
Not just me, everyone there. And that sunk in my brain and has not left me to this day. And I don't currently play Final Fantasy XIV anymore, but when I do get back to it, I'd like very much to fight Odin again. Because that memory has just sunk into my brain.
Stuck with you, huh?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Will, you can hear me too? Or
But yeah. That is how I feel about Odin. That's how I feel about the combat, because it's poignant enough, it's powerful enough that, gosh, I want a game where I start off with this and go from here. Because we do not get a point of escalation with power that tops that, really. I mean, kind of, but not really. You get what I mean?
I do. I don't yet,
I
because
don't know
have
if
to
that
still
counts.
unlock it, but we will get there. By the way, whatever camera I was using for Discord,
Hello?
can you hear us, Will? Because I hear you loud and clear. Josh, can you hear me?
I think I disconnected, y'all.
I can hear all three of you.
Yeah, I can hear.
Oh,
Yeah,
I cannot hear nor can I see Landy.
my
Yeah,
camera,
Landy is
my
like a
Discord camera
loading
went out.
block.
Yeah, my Discord camera went out.
Gosh,
I've got one on my OBS.
what did I do? I talked too much about Odin, and now this thing got cut.
No, you're
What have I
chilling, man.
done?
You're chilling, man.
Oh,
Don't
then
worry.
Slade Landy's camera.
But is he? Josh, can you ask him if he's able to hear me? Because I don't think he can.
But yeah, no, that's how I've been feeling.
What's it called? Landy says, "Can you hear him?" Because I can hear him.
No,
I cannot hear him.
You can't hear me at all.
I cannot hear nor can I see him.
That
It
is
is just
very
dark
weird.
and a spinning wheel.
That is very weird. That is very weird because you can hear me, right, Josh?
Let me try.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. That's weird that only I can hear you.
Let me try disconnecting and going back in. Be right
Okay.
back.
And once we got that fixed, we'll jump into Clive and Jill. Which I'm excited to talk about Clive, Jill, Torgle, all of them.
Oh,
Let's hope he jumps back in here and can hear us. Well, hear me.
I can hear
me,
you.
dude?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. You're all good. Yeah, my Discord camera went out, but I've got a backup that is going to go through OBS, so you guys will be deprived of my pretty face for the rest of the podcast, but the audience will not. With that said, let's talk Clive, Jill, Torgle, Sid. Let's see. Oh God, where to start? Let's maybe start with Sid and all Sid spoilers withheld. But I will say,
Okay.
Sid is probably. I caution this because I gotta wait for the game to end before I can say something like this. But as of right now, Sid is probably my favorite character, and without a doubt, my favorite Sid in the history of Final Fantasy. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, look, the voice actor's tremendous, absolutely tremendous.
yeah.
Big reps to him. Big respect.
Yeah, a lot of love to him there. He is handled so very well. He serves as a mentor figure, but I love that, like, he's not your typical mentor figure where he's walking around as the wise man. If anything, he's a wise ass. But it's like Clive, and Clive has every reason to have a stick up his ass after everything he's been through. But it's like, I'm speaking figuratively here, not literally.
Oh my gosh.
Sid pulls that stick out of his ass. Figuratively.
Yes, he does.
And, you know, there's
beating the crap out of people.
and there's a really, really, to me, like, one of my favorite scenes, which it shows how far video games have come, that now characters can emote just through facial expressions alone, where Clive was at a point in his life where he's being very brooding, very dark, very serious, and again, it makes perfect sense why he is that way. But there's a point where Sid is just busting his balls, and Clive takes to it, and he starts to lighten up. And as the two of them are like joking around a little bit, it cuts to Jill, who's looking at Clive, and she has this like smile of relief because Clive is like, I don't want to say acting normally, but is lightening up. He's lightening up. He has a friend. He's palling around. And I don't know, it's just really stuck with me when they cut to Jill and she kind of has this smile of relief seeing the two of them.
Are you talking about the scene on the way to like the first Mother Crystal?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, I was literally watching the cutscene play through my head. I was like, I think this is what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm. That's the exact scene. And exactly. I mean, dude, it stuck with you too. If you can remember it on command like that. It's just like he serves such a, like, I've never seen, and I really mean this, maybe you guys can correct me, I've never seen the mentor and the jester wrapped into one figure since Rafiki from The Lion King. You know what I mean?
Closest
Oh
we
my
ever,
god.
I think the closest we get as so far as the combination / permutation of the two of them together would be, I guess, the memes surrounding Obi-Wan Kenobi in episode 2 and 3.
Hello there.
Which General Kenobi. But yeah, no, for real.
It's a very odd thing because usually those two archetypes are separated from one another. But man, if you can get them to work, it's just so poignant. And for that reason, Sid has got to be my favorite character so far. That's all I want to say because all the best stuff about Sid is very spoiler heavy, so I don't want to get into it. But okay, Kevin Rivera says Jiraiya from Naruto is a good example. And I'm not a Bleach fan, but he says Urahira from Bleach. Probably butchered that name. But no, Jiraiya is a good point. Urahara, that's probably it.
Kitsuke Urahara, he fits the mold, and unironically in the same vein of Urahara to Ichigo is Sid to Clive. Very much so in both stories. And I'll continue that when we get to Clive. But before I talk about Clive, Josh, speak. Let us hear your voice.
Oh, so with Clive, like just from the beginning, like from young Clive to just where I'm at now, like I really feel like I don't know if this is like a good parallel. It's like kind of one I've been drawing a bit, but for those who've played Final Fantasy VIII, I get a lot of like parallels with him and Squall. How like Squall, with what he's gone through, he's very closed off. He's a very serious, character, and as the game progresses forward, he lightens up. He becomes more, like emotional. He starts expressing his thoughts and how he feels, and you see that with Clive, kind of like how Landy was mentioning, where Sid would just keep jab picking at him, and Clive, even if it's subtle and it's not like over the top, like Clive starts letting loose a bit. Jill notices it, and she's like, "Oh, there's my little Clive. Like he's still
Mm-hmm.
there." And I love seeing that, with Clive. And I really think as well, like on top of it, like he's such a well-written protagonist, and Ben being the like driving force and really bringing Clive to life, like elevates him like far beyond like what I expected. And I've really fallen in love with Clive's character. I really think he's one of the best protagonists that we've gotten in a good while, for the Final Fantasy series. And I just love seeing like his story progress. You can tell that behind this, at first like his driving force was revenge, for what happened to Joshua. And then, Sid comes along, and you can tell that Sid kind of like steers him in a different direction. He starts seeing things differently. And while he still has this like I'm out for revenge and I want to, carry the beliefs that, Sid wanted for the world, you can tell that deep down, especially with him opening up more, like he has so much love within him, and he's still that same character, and he's slowly but surely letting that shine. And I just really, really love how they've written Clive. And just I don't know what else much to say, but like, I just really love how like well written Clive has been. Like he's one of my favorite protagonists within the series. Like he's in my top five probably.
Yeah, I guess just to echo what you're saying, since we moved on to Clive here, I
Oh, was
personally,
it supposed to be someone
It
else? Sorry,
was
I thought you said
Phil.
Clive.
we were talking
Oh, was
Sid.
it Sid?
We were talking Sid. Yeah,
Oh,
We just
oh, you
wanted to let
bet.
you cook, man. It was great.
yeah. Honestly, it was fun, man. Look, I guess when it comes back around, you could just jump in on Sid, unless you want to just say your Sid piece now.
I,
Oh, with Sid, like, God, I'm a massive simp for Sid. Like the second he came on screen, like I was making all these jokes online, like, oh, I want him to break my back like a glow stick. Like I loved seeing Sid on screen. Kind of like pickpocket off of what you had mentioned. Like Clive, Sid was, kind of the same. Like, he had to stick up his ass, but he loosened up. He became a very, just fun character. Whenever he was on screen, like you can tell that there's gonna be some like lighthearted moments. He was gonna, be his like funny self, pick at Clive, and just really like, lighten the mood with just how, closed off and bleak, like with that's Clive is. And Sid in this game, like, and I'm saying this like with 100%, just like I'm going in with it, but like he is my favorite Sid throughout the entire series. Like he was such a, oh, again, like kind of like what I was mentioning about Clive. Like he was such a well written character, and I loved his arc. I love, you know, the start of when we met him up until where I'm currently at in the game. And yeah, I can't say a whole lot without spoiling, so I'll probably stop there. But yeah, I love and adore Sid. He's my favorite Sid, like to ever like be written in Final Fantasy.
Okay, Will, you're up for Sid, and then we'll move on to Clive.
Alrighty then. So, like I said, when it came to Dion, if the paradigm shifted barely, and this is one of those, this is the three-head deadlock, the three-way deadlock, I'd say. Sid's narrative driving point, his involvement with the plot and other certain characters, as well as everything that is the main meat and potatoes of War of the Icons and what is Final Fantasy XVI. It does have him in the forefront. His impact triggers too much good and too much change for him not to exist in the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he is there at all, he should be the main focus. He could have been the main focus if the writing if the people who were writing this were absolutely unhinged. So, because there are some things that, for the sake of the prologue, you both played the prologue, so stuff that happens in the prologue it's very the little dark, this mage. So, if I were writing this, I would have not, spared no one, burn it down, salt the earth, that type of deal. Would have given then the POV over to Sid until certain things happen, But that's me. Beyond that, gosh, I like Sid Olphus. He earned his name masterfully. Of all the 16 Sids that we get, 16 different Sids, not including the side games.
16 mainline Sids.
I know, right?
It's wild. Absolutely wild.
He is the Obi-Wan, and it shows, and damn it, we need more of that. But yeah, I don't know what else to say except the fact that the actor behind him has been in so many different things that it's insane. I think the only mainline story / work of fiction presently that he hasn't dipped his toes into, Lord of the Rings, I think, is the only thing that the actor has not done. And for those that want to know, it's Ralph Ineson, or his name's Ralph. His last name is Ineson, and he's been in a slew of things. He was in Guardians of the Galaxy. He was in Harry Potter. He was in Legends of Vox Machina. He was in Game of Thrones. He was in
Harry Potter. Who did he play?
Oh yeah, no, he was one of the Caro twins. I saw him. I saw his voice. I recognized his voice. I looked up his face, and it's like, I know you. I know you.
Yeah, I was like, I know his voice sounded familiar. A lot of people around me just know him as the character from Diablo 4. Like, that's all I kept hearing. But I was I know that voice. I've heard it before. Oh, that's awesome.
Heck, he was in Assassin's Creed 4. Now that I think about it, Black Flag.
Oh, Black Flag is another good one. Okay, that's why his voice sounded so familiar. I was like, I've heard this around quite a bit outside of Diablo 4, so that's awesome.
He was also in Ready Player One and in The Dark Crystal.
Man,
and he played the titular Green Knight in the movie, The Green Knight. So
he's stacking that bread, and the man deserves it. He's certainly talented.
Oh yeah, no, big time, big reps to the man. Big reps to Big Sid, because gosh darn it, great character. For the sake of his combat, when you get removed, wow, where do I start with him? With, like I said, with all the other characters, when you obtain their icons and their powers, this is just the classical black mage, and it shows. And I love every single moment you have with it, because it's one of the 4 classical classes. It is of the OG, and it shows, of the original. And it just gives you a sense of power and control over your element that you really don't get out of many other caster-based classes in games nowadays. The closest permutation I've seen is in Kingdom Hearts, and I guess that shows, because I'm pretty sure the Kingdom Hearts team was the one behind building up Ramuh's skill set. So,
yeah, I mean, if the shot lock didn't give it away, I don't know what would.
Oh yeah, it was brilliant. Loved it. Loved every second of it.
So, let's move on to Clive. Josh already so eloquently said his piece on Clive. Will, since you're the hot hand right now, would you like to speak on that?
I need you to say your piece.
Okay, I will say this. He is my favorite lead protagonist since Final Fantasy X's Tidus. I think he's brilliant. I really do. I think it took a little while for his character to get going after the prologue, after the first time skip, which makes sense at the same time because he was kind of, I don't want to say stuck in his ways, but he was just fighting to survive. He didn't really have anything to fight for quite yet. That's really where Cid comes in and where him reuniting with Jill and Torgle comes in. However, with that said, I do want to say I think this character's introduction when you play Teenage Clive is, perfection is impossible in storytelling. But to me, this is about as close to perfect of a character introduction as you can get. Because again, we kind of talked about like microcosms and macrocosms back when we brought up Benedicta. But Clive's prologue as a teenager is such a microcosm for the rest of his journey in the sense that, so here you have this kid, he's royalty. He's not only royalty, he's like a combat prodigy to the point that his father, a leader of men and a king, as well as the other soldiers and lieutenants, they can't stop ranting and raving about him. They think he's the best thing since sliced bread. Like you have that whole scene in the tavern or the pub where they're having drinks to Clive and they think he's magnificent. Even Joshua notices this, even though Joshua's the one with Phoenix's gift. Like he has the gift of the Phoenix. He even says to Clive, he's like, "You're the one they all like, Clive. It should have been you." And what I'm getting at here is like Clive, born with these gifts, beloved by his father and the men his father leads, he doesn't fit in anywhere. Like he's a royal, but he's rejected by his mother. He's a royal and he's not rejected by the common folk, but the common folk don't even see him as a human. And this is so beautifully exemplified in the scene where he's walking among the town and a commoner is carrying a crate of apples and he drops an apple and it rolls and hits Clive in the foot. And you see the commoner, he's almost like he's wearing rags and he's almost like scared. He's like, "Oh God, that's Clive. I dropped this apple in front of him."
Scared.
Yeah, he's like, "I dropped this apple in front of him and the apple touched his foot." And what does Clive do? He picks it up, he wipes it on his shirt, and he hands it back to the commoner with a smile. And right as he's about to make a very human connection with this commoner, another commoner shows up who's like that guy's boss, literally smacks the guy upside the head. He goes, "That's Clive. You show some respect." And it's like, he just doesn't fit in. Like whether he's among the royals and his mother rejects him and his father has to put up a front in front of the mother, or he's among the commoners, that he never gets seen for who he is. However, there are two characters, perhaps three, who do see the real Clive. That's Joshua, that's Jill, and that's Torgle. But they're children and puppies. They don't carry a lot of weight in the kingdom of Rosaria. But again, you just get this sense of Clive that like, no matter what he does, he just doesn't belong anywhere. Like, not with the royals, not with the commoners. He's just a misfit, which is why he eventually becomes an outlaw. It's very fitting. But you even see it in some of these side quests that you complete where some people, they find out who he is and they almost reject him after helping him. After he helps them, they almost reject him. And it's just so like, I don't know. It got me very attached to the character very early to the point that I'm yelling my entire spiel here. But it's like, it's very hard to get people attached to a character from the outset. But I don't know about you guys. To me, it was so easy to get attached to Clive. And I really felt for him. And again, him having the sense of not belonging anywhere so perfectly fit in to him ending up at the hideaway as an outlaw and him just being, he needed to find his misfits to fit in with, I don't know. I struggle to find the exact words to put it in, but again, he was just, no matter what he did, he was a misfit. And until he found a hideaway full of misfits, he didn't fit in anywhere. But once he does find that hideaway, it's so satisfying. And I'll just leave it at that. I think he's a brilliant protagonist. I'm really enjoying his journey. I'm very much attached to this character. And I'll leave it at that. Will, the floor is yours.
Alrighty then. So, gosh, without getting into spoilers, out of respect for y'all, I do like Clive. However, I like him the same. Yes, I like him the same vein I like Tidus. I like Clive and Tidus in the same vein I like Ichigo. I like the three of them in the same vein I like the character of Harry Potter. Here's where the however comma steps in. And this is a very poetic hot take. If he did not exist in the narrative, does anything change? And after going through the game with everything that's there, not really. And I kind of hate that. Because his character works. It works for what it is. I still, however, and I guess everything else about my commentary on him does lead into spoiler territory, so I'll leave it at that. I do like Clive. I will say that much. His intro story is poignant, palpable, tragic, and great. However, it boils down to the same issue I have with all the aforementioned characters, as well as some things in Final Fantasy XII. So, yeah.
You know, it's so funny. I really want to pick your brain, but like you're saying, there's no way to do that without us getting into spoiler territory. So I guess when we, after the game's been out a month or so and we can do full dive on spoilers, I definitely want to pick your brain on that. But that's an interesting take.
I would be happy to.
All right. So let's move on to Jill. Then we'll do Joshua and Torgle. Then we can wrap it up. I do have a couple questions from the audience that they've punched in that I want to get to. But let's talk about Jill. Now, listen, we have a rule at the Lodge. We don't allow Jill slander. You can criticize Jill all you want, but no slander. Of course, please understand I'm just being coy. Anyway,
of course.
I really love this character. She's not my favorite in the game, and I think she gets off to a particularly slow start. She really doesn't kick up until Act 2. Given I need to see what goes on in Act 3. With that said, look, in a story rather, you have your main character and then you have a supporting cast. Sometimes you could have multiple main characters, like for one in FF10, since you brought it up, I really see, even though Tidus is a main character, I also see Yuna as a main character, if not more of a main character than Tidus. But
that's really apt because I view Yuna as the main character of 10, not Tidus.
That's kind of how I see it too. To me, that is not the dynamic we have with Clive and Jill. Clive, very much lead main protagonist. Jill is a supporting character. Does it make her less important? Supporting characters can be, like Sid is a supporting character, but he might be the most important character in the whole game. Now, with that said, I find Jill to be phenomenal because I'm a big fan of transformative arcs. A character who the story starts and they're one way and you get to the ending and they're another way. Jill is going through multiple transformations right before your very eyes. For example, in the prologue, she is like, even though she's already been through so much, she's a very happy kid. She's very happy-go-lucky. She's snuggly with a puppy Torgle. She always looks at the bright side. And again, there's not a whole lot. It's a very brief section. But by the time you reunite with her as an adult, she is now this stoic character, which is very different than how she was from the outset. And then you sort of have her arc. I don't want to get into it. Her personal, I guess I could say revenge arc. Doesn't give away too much, but she has a revenge arc in much the way Clive does in the beginning, which she transforms again. And again, just to see her be so ride or die with Clive, like she is. There are a lot of parallels between Clive and Jill with Cloud and Tifa, if that makes sense. Where it's like,
Yes, it does.
yeah, where it's like, you know, I could get into all of that. I don't necessarily want to start pointing out all those parallels because they're a little bit irrelevant to the overall point. But to me, like, Jill is the heart of this story. It's kind of the way I see it. She's like the heart of the story, where it's like, you know, Joshua, you could argue Joshua is too. You know, I think you can make the same case for Joshua. But I don't know. I find Jill to be one of the most transformative characters. She goes through a lot of transformations in front of the audience. I find her to be Clive's strongest support system. Again, if you could argue anyone other than her, then maybe Joshua. And overall, I just think, I don't know, she's, you know, I'm trying to find the particular words I want to say this, but it's like, I think Jill is always setting the example that Clive follows thereafter. And again, we can't really get into that without getting too spoilery, but it's almost like this game, Clive's learning to be a hero by observing Jill's actions. And again, there are parallels with Joshua there too, but Jill's just more by his side throughout the journey. And, you know, there aren't a lot of people that care about Clive. Again, when you get to the hideaway and he starts to kind of take on a leadership role, of course you do. But sort of in that first act, there aren't a lot of characters that really care about Clive. And Jill does. And that's really important. You know, her entire character doesn't boil down to just loving and caring about Clive. But it is her love for Clive that allows Clive to flourish. You know, because you're talking about a man that was rejected by his mother. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of female love in Clive's life. And
very true.
You know, Jill, in a lot of ways, fills that void. Again, not from a mother perspective, because there's something romantic going on between the two. But it's like, Jill is just so important, not just to the narrative, but to Clive's character, where if you were to remove Jill, it makes Clive pretty hollow. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. I've been ranting for a bit here, so I'll leave it at that. But that's just how I overall feel. So the floor is your guys now. So go ahead, take it from me. I'm done rambling.
After you.
I was gonna say, wait, can you hear me? Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I feel like I can go first because I'm not too far in, and I know you only have a whole lot to say since you've finished the game. But I feel like a lot of what I'm gonna say would just be like replicant to what Landy had mentioned. Like whenever Jill's on screen, like there's that, you know, that more lighter tone, you know, and it's like how Landy said, you know, when you're at the hideout, no one cares about Clive, you know, everyone's calling him like, oh, Brandon, or someone, you know, you go elsewhere and it's just like he's just judged. But then he reunites with Jill and he you can tell that he's like so, you know, scared and nervous to tell her about what happened because she might view him the same. But then she gives him this sense of comfort of like, no, like, you know, like that happened, sure, and it sucks. But whatever we're gonna work through, or you know, like whatever you need to work through to help you through this, like I'm right here by your side no matter what. And as you progress through the game, like how Landy said, you know, like it's very obvious Jill's gonna have her revenge arc. She's gonna have kind of like a moment how Clive did. And it starts to show where she voices that to Clive, and he literally mirrors what she said back to her, and tells her like, "I'm here with you no matter what. Like we'll get through this together." And I really feel like because Clive is that one person outside of Joshua, because you know his father's not around, that you know that he's known from childhood that because she sees and knows Clive for who he is, her being around and helping him see that, I guess you can say like it's helping him kind of like stray away from like who he has become since he was taken after the events in the very beginning and was branded and working basically under his mother and all that. And so I really feel like Jill has been really helping bring Clive and just like his character back to life. And she's it's like sure she hasn't done a whole lot yet and there's not a whole lot going on, but I really feel like she's made more of an impact overall. More just more outside of like things that she's done, so I really am looking forward to when it's like her time to shine, when it's her revenge arc, when she becomes Shiva again and those whole you know line of events play out. But I've learned to really just love Jill's character. Like she really is like a nice little like slice of life on screen, and it's always lovely whenever her and Clive have those heart to heart moments. Like you can feel that chemistry, you can feel like when they were kids up until now, like it's like nothing has ever changed. That gap in from that moment when they were young to now, it's almost non-existent. And I just really love that dynamic and just like their relationship as a whole. I really feel like that Jill, as far as I've come like in the game, like I really feel like she's a well-written character. And I'm really excited to just see more of her in this next like whatever Lanny brought up, with her having her revenge arc and her having her light to shine on screen. But yeah.
Well said. Very well said.
Floor is yours, Will.
Alrighty then. Prepare yourself. Jill. She is, narratively speaking, in the same vein of Rukia Kuchiki from Bleach, and that's very high praise, as Rukia is, narratively speaking, the first character created for the series Bleach. So, for those of you that don't know that, for Jill, if this game didn't pull its punches with certain things, Jill would have been, I think, the main character. And I think that position supersedes beyond both Dion and Sid outright. Period. With the fact that Shiva and all that jazz, for those of y'all that don't know, from my personal history with Final Fantasy, my first Final Fantasy was technically 10, but not really. My first brief beat was about a 40-minute stint with a buddy of mine who's now passed in Makalania Temple. The first summon I ever saw in the franchise was Shiva. So there is some history I have with the character of Shiva in this franchise. It's the only summon materia that is forced upon you in Final Fantasy VII, the original. The rest of them you can outright miss. And the only way you can miss Shiva is if you have a completely filled out inventory, which at the time when you get Shiva in 7 is pretty damn near impossible. So, perspective on that. Moving forward with the spiritual predecessors of Jill, you've got Yazel, Lady Iceheart from 14. You've got Genetia from 15. You have Dagger from 9, just outright. And you've got who Yuna to this day sits pretty at my second favorite fictional character, period. So there's that.
Did you say Yuna? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, she is my second favorite fictional character, period.
Will, this is why you're always welcome in the lodge. You are clearly a man of culture, and I respect that.
Now, when it comes to unit, I got two very big hot takes. One is if you finished 10, I would say it. And the other one is if you finished 10-2. So,
I've played both of them multiple times, but Josh, just to be sure. Josh?
Sorry, I thought we were having a cough attack. Yeah, I've played. I haven't finished 10-2, but you're more than welcome to go ahead and spill.
but have you?
I've played 10 and I've beaten it twice. So yeah, you're good.
Okay, thank God. Oh, thank you. So I got 3 hot takes with 10.
Oh God, yeah. Andy Brew, I'm sorry. Andy Brew, if you are here, because I just want to say Andy Brew did rate us. I gave him a shout out, so much love to you, Andy Brew. But get out of here, Andy. Get out. Because he's about to play FF10 for the first time. So Andy, get out of here. You're being booted from the lodge like Jazz out of Uncle Phil's home. You're being chucked out of here, dude. Get out. Get out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The floor is yours, Will.
The beautiful thing about that is that I can do the Carlton with near perfection. Right. Anyway, I don't know. I love Tom Jones. Wonderful, wonderful voice. Now, getting to it. My hot take for 10. I got 3 major things. Una should have been the main focus. We either should have gotten the option to get a final Aeon, because in theory we do. We get the final Aeon of Seymour, as he did complete the pilgrimage, getting his final Aeon, which is Anima. However, we should have gotten our own final Aeon. You know, we could have picked any of them out of the lot. I would have gone with Orin, which would have made effectively Odin, which would have slapped pretty hard, especially with the fact that you fight Braska's final Aeon in the ending point of the game, which is also a hot take because I want to fight the other ones. Let me fight the final Aeon of High Summoner, Jokin, or Gondave, or O'Holland. Let me fight Unalesca's final Aeon. Give me the option to cut my teeth on the throats of my predecessors to prove that I am the High Summoner. There can only be one. It's like the Highlander that way. Okay. Beyond that. If not that, honestly, I feel like we should have just gotten to a final Aeon and we should have just died. Give us that cold ending, but make it count. Make that be the final summon to bring an eternal calm, with that being the price. Yeah, I think that would have been great. I think it would have absolutely slapped.
I think I may need to have you on for an FF10 cast one of these days.
Oh please, I would be so happy. I deep dived into 10 through the Ultimania and through the side stuff that's happened. I even know about the other version of 10.2 that they were going to develop, but they couldn't because of time constraint. Yeah,
dude, that's a rabbit hole I wish we had time for right now. But
indeed.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end it with that and just move on to just the fact that Jill's real good, man. She, with everything that happens in 16 and the vibe that I was getting from it, and just the full breadth of it all. If what happens in the prologue is definitive and it didn't pull its punches, Jill would have been the only one between her, Joshua, and Clive still alive. And that is very poignant. That's very palpable. And it would fit the vibe because there's many parallels that Jill has in the same vein of Clive with the other dominants. Sid being that kind of surrogate dad figure for both of them, actually, which is very poignant. Benedicta is that dark mirror of what Clive dealt with and also what Jill went through. Very much so. Dion is the prince and the champion that Clive tries so hard to be. And Barnabas is the person that Clive would have become if not for Jill.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Because, and that's very poignant and very true, because we will see a spiritual, I believe this with the very core of my being. We are gonna see a spiritual successor to Jill in the next Final Fantasy, or the next property that Creative Business Unit 3 works on. I believe that
it's a great template to go off of, honestly.
Because
yeah,
the other main spiritual predecessor that she has is from Shadowbringer.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if either of you have gotten through Shadowbringer or the Eden Gate, but yeah, enough said there.
Enough said, but very well said, my friend. Very well said. Go ahead.
I think, as it stands, Jill is a proper spiritual successor to all the other female summoner characters that have come before. That includes Rydia, that includes Dagger, that includes Yuna. I very much feel that. Same thing with Yazael and the character from Shadowbringer.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same vein, to the character of Queen from Type 0. I do want to bring that character out, because my favorite character from Class 0 is Queen. And I say that because I also wear glasses, and the expanded crap that's in Type 0 does paint a scale of what she's gone throughout things. So, yeah. Big reps to Big Jill.
Big reps to Big Jill. It's why no Jill slander is tolerated in the Lodge. We can do Jill criticisms. You can have your gripes, but absolutely no slander. Slander me instead. I am much more worthy of slander. So, that's just how we roll here. That's just how we roll here. So I do want to talk about Joshua, but with literally what makes this one tough is it's going to be hard to talk about him without being spoilery at all. So
could we talk about Shiva's combat?
Shiva's combat? I believe we did when we were going through the combat in the first hour.
Not quite.
All right, do you want to say, I guess, okay, do you want to, if you got something to say about the combat, we could do that before we move on to Joshua?
Yes, I'll be real fast. I'll be as fast as I can be. Jill, so combat for Shiva in this game, with all the other parallels from all the other classes coming into play. You've got the parallel for the Paladin and the Red Mage. Kind of like how Titans got the Monk and the Paladin in kind of same vein, but much more here with Shiva than anything else. Once you max Shiva out, from what I felt, you get a lot of that heavy Dante vibe from Devil May Cry with her, because of her evade abilities and just the fact that you can kind of cover the entire field with Shiva alone, in theory. And I really like that. Beyond that,
go ahead.
There's some imagery and iconography that I really want to talk about, but it's all spoilers, so let's move on.
Moving on to Joshua, where again, we're going to have to keep it limited to the prologue or else we get very, very spoilery. But I will say, I feel very similar about Joshua that I do Jill, where it's like he is the heart of this story in a lot of ways. And he's another one that's just very easy to get attached to. You know, you really feel for him from the outset. And let's just say the way that prologue ends, brutal as it was, like, it's because of Joshua I had my jaw on the ground. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do. So,
again, without getting too spoilery, Joshua is easily one of the best characters in this whole game. Bar none. Bar none.
Yes.
He's just one of the best. I can't imagine this story without him. And he carries a lot of the emotional weight. You know? Like, a lot of the emotional weight is carried on Joshua's shoulders. And, again, he's He's a brilliant character. Voice actor does a tremendous job. And I will say he surprised me. He ended up being much more than I ever expected. Again, there's so much I do want to say about him, but that I just can't. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Yeah.
Speaking of, take the floor, man. I'll wait.
Oh, were you speaking about me because my name's also Josh?
Yes.
I was just sitting here. I was like, wait, I think that's a cue. Yeah, like Landy said, because we can't really get too much into it. Kind of going back to what I had mentioned earlier, like I feel like if Joshua wasn't, if Joshua wasn't in the story, like it just wouldn't be the same without him. With what's it called? Like again, like how with Jill, Joshua really is that other figure in Clive's life where like he keeps them. It's like that Trinity. Oh, and like they keep each other together. Like they really keep Clive, on his feet and really help him. Because at first, Clive thought he was this monster and yada yada, but it's like through Sid, through Jill, and I feel like with even Joshua, like those are if anything, if not for Sid, definitely Jill and Joshua would be those two figures in his life that would really help him feel more like himself again, the person that he locked away through all this time. And I can't really say much. It's so hard to not like slip here and there, but yeah, I feel like Joshua is crucially important to the story, and it would not be the same without him.
Mm-hmm.
All you will.
Alrighty then. So, boy, Joshua. Best part about this is that I got brothers of the three that are still kicking, not even counting my in-law. One of them is Joshua, so my older brother Joshua. And immediately when I saw the first trailer, when it was just like that sheer despair that Clive was having over the prospect of losing his brother, I immediately related because I love my siblings and I don't want anything bad to happen to them ever, And you see that poignant parallel of that deep sibling love in a lot of the Final Fantasies. 2, the remake of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sort of. 8, in a lot of ways, 8. Things in 9, very much so in 9, definitely in 10. And it shines, I think, the most prominently within 10, 12, 13, and 15. Before, like when it comes to the history points, especially like between Rex and Vaughn, Chapu and Waka, very much so. Brother and Riku, Maria and Leon from 2. Fair, the sisters in 5 that I can't talk about because spoilers, and very much so the Founding King in 15, and the other side of that parallel, But with that, you see that connection, and you see, due to spoiler purposes, that it is that bond. It is the love, and then the loss of Joshua that sets Clive down that road.
Oh yeah.
And if not for Sid, and if not for Jill, he would have became exactly like Barnabas, and that's not a good prospect.
Yeah, he would have entirely lost himself.
Yeah, because Barnabas alone took over a continent. What would Clive have done?
Oh yeah,
Probably worse.
especially again like where revenge is that God, you know,
He
like
would have.
given drive, like you will go to the ends of the earth beyond the gates of hell itself to achieve just that, and then it's like, and what do you do when you achieve revenge? It's like it's just gonna keep getting worse, and you're not gonna be able to stop yourself. Like it just doesn't stop after getting revenge, because then that drive it fuels you, and then you just want to completely just be this deity basically.
Mm,
Yeah, it becomes a
Also, I kind of
bottomless
wanted to
pit.
piggyback. Oh,
No, all you do your piggybacking.
uh, I was gonna kind of piggyback off what Will said in the beginning, where like Clive could kind of like see, like it looks like he could kind of see what's going on through Torgle's eyes and such, like with what's going on between Ifrit and the Phoenix. That scene alone, like outside of just how emotionally, you know, impactful that was, and just how devastating and you know dark it was,
mm,
I think it also affected me because like I was in tears and I couldn't even see the fucking screen, and
yeah.
and I didn't really think about it or like really bring this to mind until Will just mentioned it. But I think it's also because like I'm an older brother to my younger brother, and I would go to End's Earth to protect him and make sure that he's safe. So I think it was knowing what's going on and seeing those events unfold the way they were. I think what's it called? I think it was just like internally, like I felt that pain where it's just like if I was in that position where I couldn't do anything to save him, like that would
Mm-hmm.
drive me mad. Like I would go insane. So I didn't even realize that I kind of subconsciously felt just like that brotherly protection because like my brother is like my best friend. Like him and I are really close. So I think it was just knowing how closely we're and having that brotherly bond, and then just to see it before his very eyes, just you know, like where he sees like just the life leave him. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I'd even like really feel that, and then once you like said that, Will, like my brain light bulb lit up, and I go, wow, that's probably why it like really felt like a punch to the gut more than it you know already was. So that was a really good analogy that you made.
Yeah.
Speaking of which,
I just wanted to punch in real quick. Just like you guys, I've got two brothers, one younger, one older. So again, I think one of the reasons my jaw was just on the ground is because I like simultaneously, it's like one eye saw it through Clive's point of view, being having the younger brother, and one eye saw it through Joshua's having the older, and it just like just ripped me apart from inside, man. Like I didn't even, like once the demo ended, I didn't even know what to do with the rest of my night. I think I just went to bed. But anyway, before we
that's
move on to
very.
Torgle, Will, you were gonna punch something in?
Yeah, just a few small things. I'm trying to. Give me a sec. I'm stealing myself for this. I'm the youngest of my lot, youngest brother, youngest kid, actually. So, and so I'm, though I'm close to all my siblings, there was a friend who he's no longer around. Loved him like a brother. He's one of the main. He was the main person who got me into Final Fantasy. He's the one who was the one who offered, let me play one his save file of 10 in Macalania. So that's how I got into this the first. We are presently 1 month and 18 days away from the first year anniversary of his death. He died last August. There was absolutely nothing I could do to prevent what happened. There's nothing he could have done to prevent it. And so when I saw the battle between Ifrit and Phoenix, it hit kind of hard because he's not the first close friend. Well, he's not the first close friend that I lost, but he is the last. There is no one left. I'm the last surviving person now due to just life, war, and circumstance. And so when I saw it hurt, and it just made me think, wow. And it's all the more poignant because with Joshua and Clive and the fact, the Phoenix and Ifrit, you have the parallels of the restored flame of resurrection and the malefic flames of just pure destruction. And that is often the representative goal of Ifrit. The only time Ifrit has ever been used in a positive light so far as this franchise has gone, not even in this game actually, would be that of Final Fantasy X. And that's very poignant. But then you have Phoenix, which is used in the main game and the side game. It's most, if not all, the side games where it's featured as this poignant, powerful source of new life. And that was very poignant for me because around the time of my friend's passing, his elder sister had a son. And he's a bright, brilliant little dude. He's a year old now. And that's the thing that I've kept when I went. And that's the thing that, like, the dynamic between Joshua does make me think of my brothers. Because while we don't always see eye to eye, if I call on them, they will come to help. If any of my siblings call upon me, I will go from here to the back ends of anywhere. And that love, that fire of familiar love, positive familiar love, you see it between Joshua and Clive. You see it with their father, and you do see that dynamic between Jill and Clive, Sid, Jill, and Clive, and you see those dark mirrors. You see the absence of it through Benedicta's dynamics. You see the falsimation of it with Hugo. You see the weight of it, Dion, and then you see, for lack of a better term, the bastardization of it with Barnabas. Spoilers. But it kind of does show that the familial bond, the familiar love, be it by blood or by found family, will make or break you. So I think that's very poignant. And thematically, where this game goes, it wasn't exactly where I thought it was going to initially, but I will save that for another time. But I will say that outside of Shiva, the Phoenix, and Bahamut are my two favorite summons in this game, and they're my two favorite summons in the franchise outside of Odin, I would say. So, yeah. Sorry, that got really heavy really quickly.
It got heavy, but dude, it was beautiful, and I thank you for being comfortable enough to share that, because I think that, and also my condolences for you and your lost brother. But I think
comfort is a slow killer. I don't get comfortable, I get honest.
Hey, fair enough, but I think you sharing an experience like that, it shows how special these stories told to us can be, and how they are able to carry that sort of emotional weight, but also reinforce certain lessons.
7 and 10 of my favorites.
Yeah, reinforce certain truths. But with that said, I think all we have left to cover is Torgle.
We do got the combat of Phoenix, though.
Yes, which was probably the most straightforward among the dominants, but it's one that I can't bring myself to remove from my build.
It feels like it's the first initial beat it feels like that is the starting point, and it is the starting point. And as so far as I am concerned, and I still kind of have this issue with 16 as a whole, because it's, again, a narrative beat, there really shouldn't be a second Icon of Fire. Do you get what I mean by that?
I don't, because I need to let the story finish.
Yes.
I'll have to circle back with you on that.
You do have to. Fire being a destructive element is only the opinion, viewpoint, commentary, or thought process of one who lacks understanding of fire. Now, I come from like my mom's. I'm a second generation D&D player, and I'm a insert random number here generation theologian and outdoorsman. So I know the importance of fire in the truest of sense that without it, we all die cold deaths in the ass end of nowhere. Without fire, we wouldn't have been able to understand the harnessing of energy with which our electronic technology, our wind-powered crap, and the inevitable point where we will just start to harness the atom in a safe way wouldn't have happened. With fire, we're able to drink water, we're able to purify earth into metals, we shine light through the darkness, and we are able to make men out of beasts. As such, for all the different character parallels that we see, I would say the Phoenix's combat is perfect for a Paladin Red Mage. Kind of side point. More Red Mage than Paladin. I still think Paladin combat still feels more in the vein of Shiva, just because of iconography and Heavensward references. But it is the starting point of where we go with Phoenix and where it, in theory, should have gone, that I think hits harder. But it is what it is for now.
Mm-hmm.
But if nothing else, we get original recipe and we get extra crispy, so it works.
I like that. Original recipe and extra crispy. Josh, any comments on Phoenix's combat?
Honestly, kind of like what Will said. Honestly, like I think it's weird. I rarely use Phoenix abilities outside of like Ignite, where you just like line them up and just like like that thing is just that thing. No, actually, no, I do use Phoenixes quite a bit. I don't know, especially like the setup that I have with it, because I have Ignite and then the one where like the wings come out and then just like it's like a whole like AoE, like it just attacks all around. And yeah, like I think it's like it's perfect. It's like no matter what your setup is and your abilities that you have equipped for Phoenix, like, and that's what's so great about it. It's like, and not even just with Phoenix, with all the other icons, it's like there's a setup that just is so perfect for you, because there's like it's not a whole lot, but there's quite a good like handful of options you can choose from. And especially with Phoenix, it's like you can't go wrong with what you choose. And for me, I've genuinely found that like I can just slay with Ignite, and then I forget what that other one that I have with the wings and then it just fire goes around is called. But that I felt is like so perfect for like if I'm doing any kind of like where I'm surrounded by enemies, that just does that does it for me. The Ignite can get me out of like a sticky situation right away. And I felt that best suits my play style for Phoenix, especially again if I'm in a tight situation. Like I have two ways of getting out of it for that, because it's like with Garuda, you have Arrow, which is really cool because it sucks them all in.
Mm-hmm.
And you can shoot fire within it, or shoot what's it called, lightning or whatever, into it for Ramos. But it's like with Garuda, I feel like a lot of that is more up close combat, where like I can grab them, and bring them in and just, deal damage. Or with Ramu, I feel like with Ramu, it's kind of in the middle. You have the like, and I know we're talking about Phoenix, and I'm kind of just going on all three of them, but it's like with Ramu, you have one of them where it's kind of just like I think it's the square ability where he kind of just like throws the lightning rod down and it kind of attacks like who's all around you. But then you have the other one where he kind of like how like mages do, they'll kind of like levitate off the ground and then it kind of shocks everyone and electrocutes everyone within range. And I feel like that's a nice little balance of the two, especially with like the shot lock ability where you can kind of do that from a distance. But yeah, like I felt like with Phoenix is like my getaway, I'm in trouble out of it. But it's like yeah, with Phoenix, they did a really great job, and I feel like Phoenix was like executed perfectly for sure.
Yeah, again, he's like the one icon I can't bring myself to remove from my build. It's just too fun and too good. Speaking of someone that you cannot remove, Mr. Torgle. So he ended up being more of a character than I thought he would be, and he ended up being more crucial to combat than I thought he would be.
I thought that Garuda fight though.
Yeah,
went hard.
Dude, for real, such a good boy. But you know, it's such a shame because like there are some really plot relevant things that happen with Torgle, but they're so spoilery. But with that said, again, I was just so, I guess for lack of a better term, impressed that they made Torgle as fleshed out a character as they did. Again, he's not the most fleshed out among the cast, but he really feels like a character on the journey. Like that this is his story too.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got a lot of thoughts about Torgle.
Like,
good dog.
Also, for everyone that was like, "Oh, if you can't pet the dog, it's already bad." If you don't have the trophy, we're gonna have words. Like, there's no excuse for no one to not have that trophy. Only 3% of people have that trophy. After everyone's like, "Oh, there must be pet the dog, must be pet." Like, why is it only 3% of people that have that trophy? Come on, no excuses.
I couldn't agree more, Josh. It's insulting.
When I found that out, I was like, shaking my head. I know your name. But no, it's really cool. Like, especially with combat, like, I don't have Torgle on the automatic setting. I kind of will just like, I don't know, it's weird. It's like, and I don't know if this is just like an ADHD thing, but it's like, I love to just focus on Clive and then also like multitask and look over at Torgle and have him go and attack, or if I'm like, oh snaps, I need a heal, but I kind of have Torgle in play, cast like healing toward myself. It's like I kind of like to simultaneously control both of them and have Torgle do his movement, but it's really cool because like I haven't gotten a whole lot of I guess it's like with where I'm at, like I don't have a whole lot to say in terms of I guess Torgle, but it's like for example the Garuda fight where you kind of have like a tag team moment and Torgle just wrapping his whole ass mouth around her and just flinging her out. It was just like it's so cool how they just added Torgle in towards like it's almost again like it's like a character. He's like you have like a tag team moment and he's just not there in the background attacking whenever it's like an AI, like you can control him or you can just have the like the ring or the band on where like he'll attack, based on whatever's going on or heal you and do automatically. But it's like they kind of like you said, they made him his own character and it's really cool just like how involved Torgle can get with these battle sequences or just in combat in general. So like I don't know, I really love having Torgle, a part of the party.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Alrighty then. Well, before we get into this, I'm going to pop my back a quick second. I apologize if you hear anything.
I just did the same thing. That it took me a while to respond because I was over here just cracking my back like a glow stick. I was like, limber.
Yeah, we've been at it almost 3 hours.
Oh yeah, no. And the thing is that immediately after we're done here, I'm starting the prep for like one of my 4 big projects. And I don't think I get to stop. But I'll talk about that later. Anyway, So, history time. Have any of you kind souls here, both to whom I'm talking to and on the chat, have any of y'all ever had a dog?
Yep.
Yeah, my dog's on screen right now.
Oh, they're good dogs. Wonderful dogs. The greatest thing about dogs is that they're all good boys and girls. They're all good doggos. They're mankind's best friend, and it shows. If you ever see a dog and you're like, "Oh, that's a rough dog," no, they're just scared. They're just scared.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, I'm gonna say this as quick as I can. The dire wolf iconography of Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, in its earliest concept, had been ironclad for a while. So, which is funny because the dragons were not a thing in Game of Thrones until much later in its narrative development, as far as the books go, and everything else. Originally, the Targaryens were pyromancers, which I still, to this day, and you can quote me on this, pyromancers are cooler than dragons.
Quoted. Thank you. Noted.
To that end, dire iconography has been a thing forever. Things with, Fenrir, Skoll, and Hati, the two wolves that chase the sun and moon of Norse mythology. And then the wolf that, battles to the death in Ragnarok. The one who takes out Tyr. So, yeah, that's a big thing. And, The Last Remnant, for those that are wanting to know anything about Torgle, just go play The Last Remnant. You will be better for it. You will be better for it. To that end, Torgle as a character is a good boy. His entire story arc is very poignant and very beautiful, and it ties into further things that I've commented on regarding Jill, big time, and other narrative beats that go forward and beyond, especially in some of the stuff that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. No, Torgle was a good boy. He's a very good boy.
Indeed, he is. Indeed,
Goodest
he is.
possible boy. Was everything I kind of wanted from Umbra from 15, and we didn't get, and for that I am sad. Because Umbra from 15 is a Shiba Inu. There are many a Doge jokes you could have done with him. Just no, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But every dog has his day. It is what it is.
Is what it is. I do have one question from Umbra, funny enough, that I wanted us to touch on before wrapping up. He's asking, random question I want to ask you three. Whenever you get the chance, even though it's off topic for now, what do you think about them changing Magic to being centered purely around iconic power and Torgle? Torgle having Regan, not Cure, but close enough. Like, you don't have the same freedom with Magic. Not sure how I feel about it. I kind of miss Cure, to be honest. So,
honestly,
I'll just let you guys know I'll be right back. I gotta just run to the bathroom real quick.
Oh, for sure. I'll just I'll take over and then
take over the lodge, Josh. It's all yours.
Yeah. Me personally, and it's funny enough that you asked that, Umber, because I kind of remembered this yesterday because I've just been so involved with just using the icon abilities and controlling Torgle. I forgot that the magic based abilities were strapped to just each icon, and I think it was barely yesterday or the day before yesterday where I finally started using the magic because I kind of just forgot it existed. And I feel like if it were any other Final Fantasy, for example, like 15, 13, 12, anything before it, it probably would have been a big issue, and I would have been like, this just, it feels weird. But I think with how they went about it with the combat, the icons and everything, it definitely was an adjustment because, like I mentioned, kind of forgot the magic was even there until just recently, where I was like, oh, I can just shoot fire or or just like lightning, whatever, from like afar, or if I use arrow to throw them into like a tornado, I can just shoot fireballs at them while they're inside or whatever. I kind of just forgot that was there, and I think that's kind of where it's just like, oh shoot, like I kind of forgot magic, outside of the icon abilities were in Final Fantasy. But I think that kind of goes to show that with how the combat is in this, with it being very different from prior entries, um, I don't actually see like a like much of a problem with it. Like it doesn't bother me none. Um, so I think with that being said, like I guess it's justified, or if that's the right terminology. But yeah, I feel like if it were any other Final Fantasy, um, it would have probably been something that I had a problem with. But I think with how they went about it in this game, um, it's more of just like an adjustment for the most part. Yeah, see that's really strange. Yeah, with having no dodge roll or slide. And I think that, like you mentioned, having Phoenix Shift being circle, where you dash toward them, or you have Garuda's, I forget what the ability is called, but like where you grab them in and you can just, that's the other like gap closer that you can do. That is it's one of those things again where it's like I wish we had like a dodge roll or some sort of like slide instead of having like circle for Phoenix Shift, or for Garuda's to close that gap. But yeah, for me, I feel like it's been more of just like an adjustment period, especially, and I think that's because I've gone into this Final Fantasy with an open mind, just because I was very aware of how different it was going to be in terms of past entries. So I think for me, it's been more of just like adjusting and being like, oh, okay, like that's how this works in this game. That's how that works in this game. But yeah, that's my thoughts and stuffs on it. So, Will, the floor is yours.
Hmm. I want to wait on mine for Landy, just out of respect for his, because I want to hear his opinion first. So I want to respectfully.
Okay.
Oh.
Here's what I would say. While I hope it does not become the standard for Final Fantasy in general, I do love it in this game in particular.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way I could sum it up, is like, if this same sort of concept is in FF17, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about it. But isolated within FF16, I actually love it. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and that's why I had mentioned, like, if this were a thing in any other Final Fantasy, like if it was more of like how like the more like traditional ones have been with like 15, or it's the ones before it, I would have had an issue with it. But considering the different take that they did with 16, and having that open mind, like, okay, like this can be very different from its predecessors before. um I was more than willing to like be like, okay, this is an adjustment, but this works. It's this game's thing. But if whoever decides to take on 17, whether it's the same business unit or it's someone different, I would hope that they would maybe be inspired to take elements from this game, because it's like a lot of things work and a lot of people love it. But I feel like I would love to see magic in the form of how we know it within the Final Fantasy universe to return, instead of it just being locked, how it is with specific icons. So like I would love to see magic return to how we are familiarized with it. Kind of, I guess, like how, again, with 15 is a perfect example, because that was kind of like our first look into like more of like the action based combat and not turn based. So I would kind of like to see it, I guess, return more in how 15's stance was, and let 16 stand on its own and be its own unique experience in terms of how that was tackled.
Well said. Very well said.
Thank you.
It's all you, Will.
Alrighty. So the magic system in this game is very deeply tied into the world and its setting with ether and the mother crystals and light and everything else. I can only comment on so much without getting into spoiler territory, but as you guys are at the point where you deal with the first one, right? So as such,
the first what? Sorry.
like for the combat though, I won't talk narrative, but for combat, there is power in having limits and then seeing how far you can go within them.
Oh yeah.
I would say that much. However, I would like it. I want a Final Fantasy that can play like this, but we have a controllable party. We kind of get that in the FF7 remake project that's happening right now. Now, I've got a lot of opinions about remake, which unfortunately stem from the fact that I got the entirety of it spoiled by my ex, but it is what it is. And I'm still kind of raw about that because it leaves more questions than answers. The first one being, but as so far as Magic goes in 16, it is brilliant for what the setting demands of it, because this is the first game since Final Fantasy VI that really limits what you can and cannot do in any way, shape, or form. Like in 6, everyone is bound to a class, kind of like in the same vein of how 10 and 7 are, and 8 are kind of, but far more so in 6 than any of its successors until now.
Especially after following up after 5, you know?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Which is really appropriate because the combat in 5, we have not seen a game with a job class system like that until now, kind of in 16. We weren't originally going to be getting, we were going to be getting summon, sort of, but the iconic abilities that we have are, in fact, parallels to job class. Rogue, Monk, Summoner, Dark Knight, etc. We get that here. We see inklings of it here. We see with the Phoenix, very much so with Joshua, with the brief time we have to play as him, in the prologue, that the healing. And it is that lack of healing, that lack of true curative power, that just makes the power of the Phoenix so stinking important. Which is why the prologue is so poignant, so powerful, and so just in your gut, punching you in the diaphragm, causing it to hemorrhage, reaching past that, grabbing one of your ribs and ripping it out type of emotion. Which I've had the first one happen. It's not fun. It knocks your wind out and it pretty much knocks you out. Anyway, kind of why the Phoenix is so important, and I think it's poignant why Yeshua,
Ooh, getting biblical on me here. Yeshua.
Very biblical. Which is also poignant because Yeshua the Christ of Nazareth, of the line of David, he did have siblings. Joseph and Mary did have kids besides him. So there is that. Though Immaculate Conception notwithstanding, you see that poignant parallel and that poignant power with the Phoenix more than any of the other icons, because without the blessing of the Phoenix, Clive would have died.
Mm-hmm.
Clive is by no means in a slouch. Without the blessing of the Phoenix, swordsmanship-wise, he is one of the most skilled swordsmen out of the Final Fantasy playable roster. The only ones that outstep him are ones, when it comes to the swordsmen, not the rogues, not the mages, the swordsmen. The only ones that outstep him are either augmented through G-Force and a gunblade, like Squall, have a gunblade, like Lightning, or are just ridiculous, like Cloud and Zack. And the absolute nightmare that is the Warrior of Light. Both the one from 14 and the original. The original one is just kind of crazy. But that's a topic for another day.
Alrighty.
And yeah, I don't know what else there is to say about it, except that's why the power of the icons are so lusted for in Valisthea. That's what, which is really weird considering the fact that they treat the branded like garbage. They treat those that have the power to wield magic that are not icons like trash.
Well, but honestly, I think that's because they would treat the dominants the same way if they could, but the dominants are too powerful to enslave like that. Because like, they fear the bearers the same way they fear the dominants, but the bearers are just less capable enough that they can be controlled. But if they could, they would treat the dominants the same way.
I think that it's the only parallel I have ever seen to this level of just, forget my language, but just dead-ass class warfare in the vein of having magic and not having magic would be that of Dragon Age. And I highly recommend Dragon Age to anybody. Specifically Origins and Inquisition, because Dragon Age 2 is good, but you need to have fortitude to go through 2. But in Origins, in Dragon Age in general, you have people born with magic, and they're cloistered away in the Circle of Magi, within Southern Thedas. And North, it's totally different because Northern Thedas is predominantly controlled by a place called Deventer, which is pro-mage out the yazoo. It's like night and day. Like, big time. And with that, like the plight of any Southern mage in Dragon Age is on point with that of the bearers in 16, except every time someone's tried to champion mages in Dragon Age, they wind up being mass murdering psychopaths, which unfortunately just further colors the point where if you're a mage in Dragon Age, if you're not from Deventer, you are screwed. And you're screwed in Deventer if you're not from the right family and you don't work your butt off.
And
type of deal.
Perhaps that's the nature of the beast.
That is the will to power, which is funny because that's the title of the first Xenosaga game. But yeah, for those that have power, for someone who's genuinely exceptional in any way, shape, or form, we see this in our own reality. We see this in our own world to this day. Standardization of education is one of the leading reasons why most of the most innovative, bright minds turn to dark and nefarious crap. But that's a topic for another day.
Perhaps on the spoiler cast coming to you in about a month. But we have eclipsed 3 hours on this episode, so I think it's time to close this one out. Josh and Will, if you each just want to say a closing piece about FF16 and kind of just let the people know where they can find you, what you do, and we'll put a bow on this one and end it.
Of course, after you, Josh.
I was gonna say about 16. I don't know. I guess I just want to say, especially from someone who's like my very first video game ever was Final Fantasy VIII specifically. So someone who's been playing this franchise for literally, I'm 28 now. So yeah, the past 24 years, if you want to say.
You played it longer than I have.
Keep an open mind. It might not be your cup of tea. You might, miss and want the old turn base, and that's always gonna be there. But especially with how games are evolving these days, the formula is gonna change. And the person behind Final Fantasy even said that whenever they give these games to, the next person to make the next mainline game, they always tell them this is like make the Final Fantasy that you think, would be the best to make. Like this is your like baby, do what you think Final Fantasy is today. And that can go in a whole ton of places. And it seems, sure, more it's headed towards the action based instead of turn based. But if you're on the fence of it, or it's like you thought about it, but you're still just like you can't bring yourself to it, download the demo, give it a shot. That's changed a lot of people's opinions. It's seeing it alone, not even playing it, has convinced people to buy PlayStations. It's a nice breath of fresh air for people who are newly interested in the series, but maybe the old games haven't been, their cup of tea in terms of combat, or for people like myself who, are long running fans of the franchise. And from where I'm at, without giving away too much, like they make such subtle references to past titles with Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy IV, the very first Final Fantasy. Like with it being a nice breath of fresh air and it being the 16th entry in the series, it also in a way also feels like a love letter to all of those that have come before it. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough. If you haven't played it yet, or if you're thinking about it, or you're on the fence of it, give it a shot. I personally think it's well worth it. But with that being said, you can find me on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. All of my socials is Joshish. I do primary focus on JRPGs with a little sprinkle of horror and visual novels. But yeah, that's me, and I'm gonna pass the torch over to Will.
Alrighty then. My final non-spoiler oriented words for Final Fantasy XVI. If you do not have the gumption or the patience for turn-based games, this is your best way to get into action-oriented games. I highly advocate this one, as this is a labor of passion and love, and this is the finest polished game that I've played in a very long time. I can say that with absolute certainty. It is one of the very few rated M games that I will ever be covering on my channel. And while I got a lot of words on it that are spoiler heavy, I would recommend this to most folks. Not everyone, but most. Beyond that, try it, see for yourself, don't let me influence you, think for yourself, don't be a sheep. To that end, where to find me? It's very easy. I'm on Will's Word, on YouTube, on Twitter. I'm trying to figure out Twitch, but I mean, at this point, I can barely figure out how to get my mic and my new camera to work. So it's a little column A, a little column B. And for those that are wondering, 3:30 p.m. today, Pacific time, I'll be diving into the Mass Effect trilogy. Yeah, y'all want to join me there?
Well, there you go. You guys know where to find them. Again, I've got their profiles linked in the title. I've got their socials linked in the description. Will, if you need any help with Twitch, just shoot me a message. I'll be more than happy to help you figure it out. But again, hey, listen, we did of course, we did 3 hours of next to no spoilers on FF16. I'm very proud of us. But this was a good stream. It was good to talk about it. I can't wait to finish it. I have so many ideas about it. But without further ado, we are going to wrap up today's episode of The Lodge. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out in the chat. Thank you to the sages. Thank you to our amazing guests. And ladies and gentlemen, you be good out there. Be good to yourselves and each other. And I will see all of you sickos and normies next time.